6:30, April 7th, calling select board meeting to order. First item is consider additions or adjustments to the agenda. Are there any additions or adjustments to the agenda?
I'd like an executive session for employee evaluation. Number 1 VSA 313. It's going to be. I'll call it that.
Okay. Any others?
I have possibly two. One is the mud abatement line in the budget, which was approved. And we had an email, which I was CC'd on, and Adrian responded to, from Doug Muldy about Green Up Day and having a town crew pick up stuff. So I think that's probably a board discussion.
That'd be an issue or concern or an addition.
It could be either. Would you like me to bring it up as a select board issue and concern?
Sure.
Okay.
That was Green Up Day and the other one was mud abatement. Is that another?
I could bring that up under select board issues and concerns too,
Okay.
if you prefer to do it that way.
Any further from the board? Like Casey has a comment?
That question that I sent you guys as to whether in the discussion of items to 21 and 23, there is room for any input or consideration of committee.
Of what?
May not
Casey?
be.
Of what?
For items 21 and 23 about town work and communication between folks.
Yeah.
And I sent a memo to for an email to everybody, asked them whether I could ask about committee needs in those items.
Committee needs. Okay.
Yes,
Yeah.
right. Oh, and if not, this seemed like the right article to ask.
Yeah, I mean, we're beginning the conversations and
Right.
we've never rejected any public comment. I'm not going to say that we would reject input.
Yeah, I mean, and it's all, there's nothing unpublic about it.
Yeah.
So,
Does that answer your question?
Yep.
All right.
thank you.
Invoices and orders are going around right now. Item number 3 is public comment. Is there any comment from the public? Hearing none. Item number 4 is issues or concerns, and I'll let Duncan lead off on that one.
Sure. I apologize for being somewhat out of the loop on this stuff, but it was brought to my attention today and I wanted to follow up on it. In the budget that was in the town report, we had a line item, mud abatement, which is line 384 in the budget. I could swear that when we had our last budget meeting, we talked about putting sum of money back into that line item. I think it got, Tom, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you said that it got moved up into
Right.
gravel or whatever.
Yeah.
And I think we specifically wanted that to be considered for mud abatement because we felt there was value to doing those mud abatements. So it didn't get in. It's zeroed out at this point, but I still think it's a good and valid use of the money, and we should continue to pursue it and specifically request Jason to come up with a proposed location to spend some money on mud abatement.
You're saying for next year,
I'm saying for the year that we're currently in.
this year.
Because that money, the money is actually in the total budget. It's
Yeah.
just under,
The 15,000 got moved up for
it got moved up.
gravel
Yes.
or stone, whatever it is.
And for those who don't remember what the mud abatement was proposed to do, we were trying to set aside a certain amount of money every year to correct a bad mud situation so that eventually we'd have most of those bad situations corrected and we would end up spending less annually on gravel to deal with mud. So that was the purpose of it. I still believe it's a valid purpose. And I thought we had talked about putting it back in, but it didn't get put back in.
I remember a conversation where for the most part, it was just being used for purchase of gravel and stone, so we're accurately reflecting what was there. I still see value in the line, but I don't recall asking money to be put back there this year. But I'm not opposed to it. Not like actually doing a mud abatement project.
I think Jason's logic was that now we have deeper ditches. And so in the mud situation, they handle it differently, and so, and then piggybacking on. Is that the ditching makes mud season less and that it's only being used to gravel and basing that. Just he stockpiles in the fall, so he doesn't really know how to pull, it's not like they're doing underdrain anymore, that's like specific projects. So
we don't have any bad mud spots anymore.
I don't know the answer to that question, but I only know that it's harder for Jason to track, which is why he wanted to bring it up to gravel, because that's what he's actually using it for. That was his logic at that time.
We could certainly ask him during his report, or a report when he's here.
Yeah.
About a project maybe for this year, or at least plan one for next year and get back in the rotation. Something like that.
Yep, I could well be wrong about this, but I could have sworn that we talked about putting the money back into that line item. So maybe I'm just wrong. The minutes would
The minutes will
probably tell us that, but I guess my point is, I still think it's valid. I find it very hard to believe that we don't have any spots that are in need of attention, and the goal of that concept was to get us to a point, hopefully, where we would no longer have to have that line item because we'd taken care of all of our spots. And maybe we can have Jason, tell us, do we have any spots that really need to be addressed, and maybe there are none, and that would be good news. Love it.
But in reality,
yeah. In the other thing, I guess, was the green up day thing.
yeah, the green up day item.
Yeah, so I would certainly be in favor, and I think in years past, we have had the highway crew go out and pick up bags, particularly at those locations. And I would certainly be in favor of doing that again this year.
Any objections? Don't hear any.
No, I also heard that in years past, that the town crew has brought a truck and left it at the village green to have people put tires into and then take it back to the dump. Is that something we could do again?
It's costly.
It is.
Very.
Oh, okay.
I think some of those tires are free if they're from Green Up Day, right? Is there some, they used to.
We got that built into our agreement we're hosting the transfer station at our site. And I'm pretty sure that was built into the agreement, that they would accept our Green Up Day tires as part of the agreement.
Is that true, Rosemary?
I remember seeing a bill for tires.
Perfect. Sure.
Okay.
I take tires to the transfer station and they take me right to the cleaners.
Yeah.
I'm taking them to the wrong place.
Well, $2-3 a piece, yeah, but I'm pretty sure that we had that built into our agreement, that they would accept our Green Up Day tires.
Great.
This year, there might be a change to try to reduce overtime. They used to have a couple of guys come in to drive around and pick up Saturday afternoon. I think they might leave things on the side of the road till Monday and then pick it up during regular hours. I think if anything, it'll only invite more time to collect more things, and it might just be a benefit for everybody, but then we're not paying overtime, and we get more stuff off the road.
Yep.
Great idea.
I'm fine with that.
Any other issues or concerns?
Yes. Just updates. So the website's going good. I've met with Town Web once and they presented the website and I gave a bunch of feedback and provided them a bunch of content. So that's the first round. I'm pretty sure we have 2 more rounds after that. So that's going good. And then just an update on the CDS funding. Tom, Randall, and I applied for those, so those are all good. And I just also wanted to
What was the funding that you?
the CDS funding for the
Congressionally directed funds.
Okay.
Yeah, the Peter Walsh one. And just wanted to put a call out for volunteers for the library. The Vermont State University Library is giving them a bunch of shelves. They're looking for volunteers on Friday, April 11th at 1 p.m. at the college's library on the second floor. Yep.
Anything else, Adrian?
Nope.
Okay. Consent agenda items. I would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda, which consists of approving minutes from March 3rd, 4th, 5th, and 17th, as well as appointing Mike Mignon to the planning commission.
So moved. Second.
Motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? And the ayes have it. Rosemary, floor is yours.
I handed out the budget status report. And I have 3 liquor licenses. And a engagement letter from our auditor.
The liquor licenses, those are easy. Is anybody opposed to Rosemary applying for the liquor licenses online?
No, hey.
I don't think you even need a motion anymore, do you?
Well, I have a one-time occasion for Vermont Studio Center for May 11th.
How would the board like to handle that?
Catering event or move to approve.
Motion, is there a second? All, any further discussion?
And I also have a Dollar General and Maple, not Maple, the Marvin store as.
Whichever renewals. Yeah,
renewals, yeah.
right.
And I don't know if you guys are aware, but there's apparently a liquor store in the Jolly store.
There is, like,
There's, I haven't been in there, but I've heard there's some shelving.
Is there a
Yourself.
license allow that?
I was looking at Sterling Market's license, and Sterling Market only had a second class license.
Really?
So I don't know if 802 Spirits is a state run.
Yeah,
it is,
it's a
yeah.
state agency.
They must, must lease.
It must take care of it for 'em.
So are we assuming that the Jollies is through the state?
They were given a 10 by 10 small, 10 by 10 shelf space and 5 by 5 storage space. And I think at some point it might come before the board, maybe. Working on the process to maybe add a second, small one, right, because that doesn't meet the need that was here. The store that was next to Stony Market was significantly larger. And so, if we ever do get another grocery store that we're all hoping for, right, that store would provide a larger service. But I think that's gonna take some petition of the town or the board, and I don't know that process. To allow 2 in the town.
So is the concern that Jolly doesn't currently have a license that would cover?
So I
this
just want to make you
use?
guys aware of it.
Well, technically, they're going by stores now anyway. aren't
Yeah. Is it say Stewart's, have they got a new sign there, or is it? just
They haven't got the
Jolly?
new sign yet, but I think it is
Stewart's,
completely
yeah.
stores now.
All those in favor of Duncan's motion and Peter's second? Signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? The ayes have it. The liquor license you're good with.
You just get a blank for all this stuff.
Yeah,
Is this motion just for the studio center catering thing? That was the motion that was made. before
Yep,
you guys started.
It is, but we motioned September of last year that any renewals could just be renewed by the town clerk. She's been keeping us updated, which is helpful, but those are renewals, not new applications, that's what I heard. You wanna do the budget status report, Rosemary?
Sure.
Is it only good news?
Budget status report includes. The library expenses for the move at the, on page. 10.
And I have. I did my first request for reimbursement for the library. And they. Approved it all except for $6,000. They wanted some purchase on any basis.
Everything in tonight's warrant covers the total cost to move the historic building to the new site and. That plus insurance means that we can build a building and we funded the cost of the renovation and relocation of the old building. About, I think a total will be about 450 to 500,000, which is significantly less than it would cost to build a building of that caliber.
Anything further on the budget status? Questions from the board? What's next, Rosemary?
R.H.R. Smith has. Presented us with a engagement letter for June 30th for 23 and June 30th of 24. I had already thought the board had approved. This 3 years ago. I don't know, you want me to sign it, or does the board want to sign the standard engagement letter?
From recollection, which can be dangerous. We
It's-
approved 1-year contracts, but like with an automatic renewal pretty much,
It's 9,500 for each year.
which is what we budgeted anyway.
Which is consistent with what they had
Yes, that's it.
estimated before.
And probably for. This current year, we'll probably need a single audit, depending on how the library. When we, it's this year, you know, because it's right in the middle of the fiscal years.
Yeah,
Move to approve Rosemary to sign the engagement letter.
Second.
motion a second, further discussion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
All right.
All those opposed, and the ayes have it. And now we're on to the fun stuff, Rosemary.
And stuff, yeah, I guess so. Nobody gave me any comments, so.
That doesn't mean anything. So to hopefully move things along, I would recommend that the board approve the offer of employment engagement letter with 2 minor changes. Do people have a copy of it in front of them?
That's what I was trying to.
Oh, it's in the packet.
It's in the pack. Okay, so where it says wage estimates for Rosemary, I would suggest adding wage and benefit. Or adding in benefit to wage, next to wage, in between wage and estimates. And the other thing is, I really don't think that Rosemary needs to go through a 6-month probationary period and a 6-month evaluation, so I would suggest the offer letter specifically states that we're waiving the probationary period as described in the job descriptions.
For Rosemary.
Yeah, yeah, and I really, I think she's been around long enough that we don't need to give her a 6-month evaluation.
There's a motion on the floor
Second.
and a second. Further discussion. Is it treasurer job description? I didn't see a reference to delinquent tax collector. But that's something that we appoint anyways.
So my motion is specific to the offer letter, not the job descriptions. I would
Okay.
like to,
Yep,
I would like to talk about the job descriptions, but
if it's the offer letter, that's all it is. Further questions, concerns, comments on the offer letter? Who's gonna sign it?
I would suggest that it actually doesn't even need to be signed by the town. Rosemary should sign it as having seen it, reviewed it, and accepts it. But the town doesn't need to. I mean, certainly you can.
So, okay,
And I would
Yes.
I would suggest the motion include having Evan sign on behalf of the town.
that's a friendly amendment to you,
Mhm.
Peter. Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All
Yeah.
those opposed,
I'm an I, and it should be put on town letterhead, if can you do that?
That's a small
Or
change.
You do that,
Yeah.
or somebody do that?
motion passes unanimously. Now we're on to the job descriptions.
Yes.
What do you have for comments on that?
Me personally,
Yeah,
I have a couple. One is, I think these are silent unless I'm missing something as to who makes the appointment for the assistant clerk and treasurer.
I think that's still set in statute even if. Am I wrong about that?
Well, I've read it both ways. Some ways. You know, the appointed clerk can appoint, and other places it says with the approval of the select board.
Would you prefer to just have something in there for clarity? Do you have a preference either way? I thought. I guess I've only read one of the ways that you read. But I thought the clerk treasurer still had the authority to appoint their own assistant.
And I would be happy with that concept, knowing that we're talking about Rosemary. And when we get to the point where Rosemary's no longer gonna do this, we could have that discussion. But, and so that can, if that goes in there, that's fine. Does it need to say, and this is a question more than a recommendation. Does it need to say for either of these that there is not a residency requirement? Or is that unnecessary?
I think it's unnecessary because you're gonna be in a town employee.
Well, I'm talking about, yeah. Yes, it would be a town employee, and, I think it goes without saying that the board can appoint someone who is not a resident to those positions. So it probably doesn't have to be in there. And the other thing that I was gonna say about the job description for the treasurer, I think it should probably mirror the language that it's a part-time police exempt position. The same, similar language to what's in the town clerk's description. I guess that's all I had.
And I have the question about the delinquent tax collector, but that's,
Currently, that's an elected position.
yeah, I was gonna say that's still an elected position in town meeting day, right?
You can vote to appoint, at the voters. Agree to appoint.
That'll be a separate article at a different town meeting.
Interesting.
You've always been the delinquent tax collector. What about tax sales? Is that solely in the hands of the delinquent tax
Mhm.
collector?
Mhm.
Responsibilities? That was my other question. Anybody else have questions? There was a spelling error, but that's minor.
Is it typical, I think I've asked this question before, but is it typical for there to be like two postings for the town treasurer and the town clerk if we want to hire someone to do both roles?
You're talking meld them into one job description?
Yeah, because I don't know if we're gonna post this on websites and stuff, and it might be confusing for applicants to see two positions kind of.
I think, that a great model is what the select board did for the community and economic development specialist and the town administrator. You offered it as two individuals and you also offered it as a whole unit. And I think as long as it's well described, most people in the municipal world outside of large towns, they're in the same position. So
Okay.
I think as long as we're looking at candidates who've had municipal experience, it probably will be so, that'd be okay.
And I would prefer to keep them separate as job descriptions, even if it's the same person occupying both seats like Rosemary currently does.
Mhm.
But it could be at some point in time that some of this may depend on what the village does too. With positions. So I think there's value to having them separate, because it could be at some point in time that two different people are,
Mhm.
you know, treasurer and clerk. They may not always be the same person.
Okay. Mhm.
And currently, our situation is up until this past town meeting.
Mhm.
You were elected both as clerk and treasurer separately.
Do we need to motion to approve these job descriptions? Seeing that we'll probably revisit them. Give or take 6 months from now.
Could we make the few minor, I think we've made the offer of employment letter, so the appointment has officially been taken care of. Right? So I think we could still tweak the job descriptions if we
We have
needed
to
to,
wait after the 45 days?
Within 45 days.
within 45. Yeah.
If you would prefer to wait until the 45th day,
No,
I don't know if the board would be upset, but.
no, I just wanna make sure. That you could do it before the 45th day.
Gotcha. Okay, so you want those couple of tweaks to the job description, and then we could approve that at a future meeting?
I'm thinking it might not be a bad idea just to, you know, do those couple of little tweaks and then approve them officially. Because I think we've taken care of the important business, which is the appointments. And the job descriptions, I think, could be approved. You know, if you're willing to work without a job
that's
description
fine.
for a couple of weeks or whatever.
Are you comfortable with that?
Mhm.
You're
Do we have
familiar.
to do that?
Mike, you good?
Motion
fine.
before the appointment at treasurer?
Um,
No, whatever one that was,
I think they're gonna resolve it and.
We're dealing with that shortly.
Yeah,
most
there's
likely.
been no appeals within the 30-day appeal period, so I think we're okay anyways.
okay,
So should we, I mean, we've made an offer of employment letter, which is not actually the same as appointing a clerk and treasurer. Should we officially make a
Yeah.
motion to appoint Rosemary as clerk and
I think
treasurer?
Rosemary's asking maybe take care of number 8 on the agenda and then appoint her.
ratify it, the town meeting.
Yeah, but I think there are two different things. One is the voters authorize the select board to appoint. And then the board needs to appoint. So you're saying we should clarify that the motion was,
Yeah, clean up the
Okay.
clean up for the town meeting and then their appointment.
Okay.
Can't be.
Item number 8. I think 7's already dealt with. Or no, 7, so we're doing 8 first and then dropping back to 7. I would entertain a motion.
I'll move to resolve an error which occurred during Article 8. Shall the voters authorize the select board to appoint a town treasurer as provided in 17 VSA 2651F of town meeting? There was no motion or second during the meeting. However, there was a successful vote to pass the article. The lack of motion was a mistake and is to be resolved by the select board through this motion.
It's a motion on the floor. Is there a second?
What was the, I'll second it. Just to
Okay.
continue.
Further discussion.
Further discussion. What was the error?
The error was, and I think it's because they're closely tied, but there was a motion to appoint the town clerk. And a second, and then we discussed it, and then there was a vote, but at town meeting, there was no motion to appoint the treasurer or a second. We just went into discussion and the voters approved it.
but the article was approved.
The article. I mean,
Yes.
the warning was approved. Beginning,
Well, the minute says it's all done.
Donna,
Well, I think what the minutes say was that the moderator called for a vote as if there had been a motion that people were voting on, but there hadn't actually been a motion on that article.
Right.
Was it actually that he was motioning to the same thing, the town clerk and not the treasurer? Second time
It
around?
was that there was no motion, you know, usually before you start discussing a motion, before you start discussing an article, somebody makes a motion. But nobody made a motion this time, and nobody noticed until it got time for the vote. And they called for a vote, but there wasn't anything for anyone to vote on.
Then we reached out to consulting attorneys who advise that there is a mechanism in statute to correct this very mistake. And that's.
Further discussion? All of those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, the ayes have it. Guess we're back at item number 7, Duncan.
So I would move to appoint Rosemary Audibert as the town clerk and as the town treasurer.
I'll second.
Motion and a second, further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, and the ayes have it.
Thank you.
Do they come as a big surprise?
You never know. And are you guys okay if I appoint Susan as my assistant?
I would be surprised if you didn't.
Okay.
But the rest of the board will speak for themselves.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes.
Mike's quiet, so he's good with it. Is there anything further under your report, Rosemary?
I don't think so.
No. Up next is the highway foreman report.
Jason does not have, he was planning on having a report in person, although he called me for the meeting to say he's not coming. I did put one quote in the packet for him regarding moving forward. Within the budget, we had through our highway capital equipment plan, we had planned on buying a pickup. And that pickup, the price came in $29,000 and anticipated. And he only was able to receive one quote. And we have not.
It came in 29,000 what, Tom?
Higher than anticipated. So we budgeted $42,000 and $40,000 trade. We got $29,000 trade. And it came in at 71,000 total. So $29,000 over budget to replace the pickup. And we're waiting on Ford and Chevy. Would the board like to move forward with this quote or wait till the other two companies come in? Jason is hoping to. He wants to work, he wants to get a Dodge again, replace the one that he has, but he's still waiting on the Ford and Chevy.
We need to wait on the other two.
I agree, and I also, I know that Jason is interested in getting a crew cab, and that's what that is. I would be interested in finding out what the price would be for a non-crew cab, regular cab.
This, has he told you why he wants to crew cab?
Yes,
Okay, good.
at least I think so. So, but some of the other board members may not be aware of that.
Right now, when they go to trainings, they can take 3 people in the pickup, which means they have to take 2 tandems to these trainings in far off places. It's kind of silly to take a 10-wheeler. And so if they replaced the current truck with a crew cab, they would be able to take this, all 5 guys could go to the same training in one truck.
Instead of taking 2.
No,
They don't take 2 tandems, do they?
Maybe they just take 2 trucks. My mind is 2 tandems, but now you say, maybe 3 guys can't fit in the front seat of the.
Maybe.
They may not be.
Do you think the other quotes will come in before our next meeting?
I think he's hoping, and that's why he didn't come tonight, thinking we'd be here in 2 weeks.
Okay,
Yeah.
because I think we should act fast on any vehicle purchase.
Well, he wants to get it ordered, so the purchase date won't actually be till July 1st with the new budget, but he wants it ordered now, so we're not waiting.
$105,000.
Do they,
Here? Typically, no.
do they set up the dump, or does it get, are we buying just the?
Right?
This is the first I'm seeing it.
It'll be May.
It's got the big deal plus package. Body upfit with a Fisher plow. I assume body upfit is the sander. Fisher plow is a plow.
He did say there's an opportunity to keep our existing plow. Right now it works fine. His concern was that typically, there is a lifespan on those too, so we might be replacing a plow, we get less trade in without the plow. And then we might have to replace the plow during this truck cycle, so I think it can go either way.
Okay. The other one, since Jason's in here, you were just asking about a tandem and if we wanted to go through the sealed bid process or we could accept the state bid of office purchasing and contracting.
Yeah,
How's the board feel? I mean, we did go through quite a process not too long ago. I'm not sure if the results will be that much different. And this truck we would be ordering for July of 26. Right? Not gonna see it soon.
correct. So it's 18 months out build time. So we want to order it now. We'll purchase it in the FY 27 year.
So this is the first time for me. Can you describe a little bit more about the difference?
I think that would be a Tom.
So typically our procurement policy requires purchases over $3,000. It goes to the select board. They can request, they can dictate whether to do a sealed bid.
Oh,
or
you're still
not.
doing
And I think it's 10,000, anything over
I just wanted to
10,000.
make sure Peter.
It's a sealed bid unless the select board says no. And so that's what we did in the fall, as we put out a sealed bid process. I think we had 4 trucks come back. Freightliner, Peterbilt, Western Star, and International. And it was a process. It took a long time to get all those prices in, and then. But the Office of Purchasing and Contracting in the state, they already do the bid process and they get contracts for the state, where the municipalities can take advantage of. And so they've already gone through that procurement process. I think it's a good check and balance to check it every now and again, but since we got the same result as the Office of Purchasing and Contracting, the price that International gave us was their price. So when the board had the decision is, should the board forego the procurement process and just move forward with International, or should the board go back through the sealed bid? And there's no wrong answer. It's just what.
Okay, thanks.
How's the board feel in that one?
With the state bid price, are we able to, my understanding of what it used to be, at least, was the state put out a bid specification for the
Yeah.
trucks.
Yeah.
You know, the horsepower size, the motor type, the gear ratio, all of that stuff. And in the past, our highway crew has suggested that the state spec is a little under resourced for town highways.
So when I met with the International dealer, well, I asked that question. I think you actually asked the question in the fall, and so we use the HX series, which is higher horsepower, pretty much the same cab and chassis, but it just has a bigger engine. And versus the HV series, which is the state bid. And so what it is the state price for the cab and chassis plus, I think it was about 10,000 at the time for the difference of the two. So we still get the state price on everything but the engine. It's just the value added after. So they are giving us the contract, just not the contract on whatever equipment is not part of this bid.
So if I understood what you just said, we would have the option of beefing up the package a little bit from the state bid.
Yeah, there is actually an interesting trend now where people buy new trucks and they like chrome them out, deck out the trucks really nice, and you get a really high trade-in value. But because you're under the municipal contract, you're paying less, and so then that offset between purchase and trade-in shrinks a little bit. So I think you're onto a really good point, and it's taken off in the south, and that trend is kind of moving forward and moving north for us to maybe to look at.
I think fairly enough, Tom is asking for like directive. I don't think we've given it, right? Am I right? I'm fine with going for the Office of Purchasing and Contracting because we went through an arduous process months ago, and I can't believe that the prices have changed that much. But I'm only one board member. Can we just pull the board? I'll start on that side.
I'd be happy to have it in the state.
Okay,
Same here.
you already know my feelings, right?
Same.
That's clear, right?
I just think at the time you sign that, you just acknowledge that you're foregoing.
Yeah, and accepting the state.
Exactly.
The alternative, which I've never been real happy, is if we don't go with the state, we have to develop a bid spec ourselves. Or allow the contractors to propose
Yeah.
a spec, and that's the time consuming part, is trying to compare.
It took us 6 weeks to get prices in the fall because every single salesman had to come, look at our existing truck and then try to match it. And so when you have Peterbilt, which really is meant for driving trucks down the road, it does not plow, it does not have heavier springs on the right side for wings. Like all these things that they have to like reinvent to try to match our price, it was really hard and it took forever to get numbers. And now we're working with a truck that's built, ready for municipal work tomorrow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is there anything further? I know Jason will probably be here in 2 weeks. That was like the big one I wanted to make sure we
Yeah,
got
are you
clarity.
okay if I reach out, well, with Jason, talking to Jason first and just get that. That official offer from International at the next meeting? Sure.
Absolutely. Is that all we're gonna cover under the foreman report?
I think so, yeah.
Okay. Next up, we have Scott Griswold here for the NEMS contract, and because we have so much going on, or NAS, I always call it NEMS,
Well,
but it's not.
contracts.
No, names.
Yeah, Scott is here to get a signature for ambulance services contract in the amount of $169,558, which is what we had budgeted. How would the board like to proceed?
Both authorize Evan to sign the agreement contract.
Motion and second, further discussion? Do you already have another town signature?
We have to have a master copy.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what I figured. All right. Hearing no further discussion, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? And the ayes have it. See,
Thank you,
Remember
Scott.
I asked earlier if we were the first
I
town.
thought we were.
One point of clarification, because we pay the most, can't we like be the first on the list?
All depends on people respond.
I'm just picking.
We are looking into the possibilities of merging the company into one, but only if it's new image to all the towns. So we're looking into that, it may or may not happen.
You mean merging all of your
It's
location?
one budget.
One budget, yeah.
It says to. But we can't do that if it's gonna, because if it's going to raise certain areas,
Yeah,
but huge amount of money. But we use our people in all 4 locations. We use our ambulances in all 4 locations, keep the mileage down. And it's really hard to keep track of who's working here today and the other tomorrow, and where's the overtime about.
Yeah.
It takes a lot of extra work and extra office time, so we think we can do it, so it would benefit all 20 some odd communities.
that would certainly be awesome if you get the same service for less money. I can't see anybody complaining about it.
Thank you.
Yep.
I'll keep your dust it up.
All right. Thank you very much, Scott. All right, next up, we have Tasha Wallace and Navy Seth here.
And Seth is here.
Discuss EDA.
Up to the microphone.
EDA Act 181.
How much fun do we have today?
Thank you, sir.
It's about to get really fun.
I brought a map. I don't usually travel with a
You
map.
brought paper.
Yes. So. All right, so you know us both, Tasha Wallace and Seth Jensen from LCPC. Thanks so much for having us today. We really appreciate it. So we're here to talk about 2 issues related to legislative changes. The first is, and I think I had mentioned this briefly at my last visit, as that state legislation required that a housing needs assessment be completed for the entire state. That was recently completed. And then future housing targets were allocated to different regions. And then the Regional Planning Commission for each region was tasked with allocating those targets across communities. Now, I want to stress that these are aspirational targets. there are not negative things that will happen to you from the state if you do not meet the targets. At the same time, I think the state is really trying to really highlight the importance of targets. Now, the regions were given discretion in how to allocate those targets across communities. And so, given the vast differences between the communities in Lamoille County, we just thought that we should allocate those targets by population. So I brought copies of those. Duncan has seen these because he's on the LCPC board, so he's somewhat familiar. And basically what we did is just take the number of housing units identified by the housing needs study and the census, the population based on the census, and identify what percent of the population is within each community. And so you will see for Johnson, and this is of course based on 2022 number of housing units. Certainly you've lost some units with the flooding. But you're looking at goals for 2030 between 187 and 264 new units.
Now, when you say units, do you explain what that unit is?
A unit is somewhere person could live. So that could be a single family, that could be an apartment,
So
that
it's
could
not
be a condo.
Specifically low-income housing that the state is
No,
targeting.
it is housing units. And so, for instance, there's one community in Lamoille County who's adding a lot of units that are most specifically not low-income housing, just because of economic pressures. And again, most of we're seeing in the county is really based on what's happening with the economy.
It's a lot of units.
It's a lot of units. And one thing that you will need to do going forward is the statute does require all communities to incorporate these goals into your town plan with some discussion. So, you have questions? Comments?
Thank you for.
Good luck.
Lofty goals.
But,
Yeah.
Is there an anticipation of funding streams and where is the municipal realm gonna fall and manage funding streams for?
So, the answer is it depends. I mean, some towns have very few tools for encouraging new housing. There's no zoning, there's no particular fund available to encourage it. I know there are a number of different housing proposals in the legislature, all designed to accelerate housing. One thing that I know that this community has not had enthusiasm for zoning. But one of the things that we'll talk about when we get to Act 181 is that when you have zoning, you are eligible for designating areas in a certain way, which can expand your opportunity to have Act 250 exemptions, which could be a real incentive for developers. Do folks have questions, comments? Our staff will also be working with your planning commission on these, as this is something that will be going to the town plan.
Certainly.
I have a question, which I unfortunately didn't think about at the board level, but I'm just thinking about it now.
Oh, you're gonna spring it on me now?
Thinking about it right now.
All right.
So with some of our contracts, Lamoille County Sheriff's, I think, for example, we use a blend of population and grand list. Do you have any sense whether or not that would significantly change any of the numbers in here? And would that be a possible thing to think about regionally?
And interestingly enough, it's not the grand list that other regional planning commissions have used as alternative designations. I think what you'd find if you looked at the grand list here, then communities like Stowe would have a dramatic increase in the housing units to develop, and really that we want housing developed in centers around the county. Some regional planning commissions have used the availability of water and wastewater in the center as an important attribute for allocating additional units to communities.
which we don't control. I mean, one of the reasons I was wondering about grand list is to have a private developer, and I said this at the board meeting, develop, there's got to be a market for the housing. So there may not be much of a market in Waterville, or some of the more remote parts of the community, and a much greater interest and marketability of property in a place like Stowe. So the grand list may have some reflection on market realities, I guess is what I was thinking, and it may not. I don't.
Right.
On a different, similar note, I was sitting here trying to take this in. It doesn't really take in. I'm not blaming LCPC. I get you guys did it in
We're
a fair
here
way.
to,
Well, I mean, we're not
You're
taking
the bearer of good news.
right, yeah,
we're not taking into
Yeah,
account
yeah.
getting this report.
yeah, sure.
Just geography,
Mhm.
right? If you look
Sure.
at total acres in a town, total versus
Mhm.
the acres that the state owns in a town. They're on property that you could develop units on.
Mhm.
I'd be willing to bet you Johnson has the highest percentage.
Mhm.
So we have a smaller, us and Hyde Park are very similar in size. They have a lot more area where they can develop units. They also have a higher grand list. And other features. We have a better sewer plant, whatever. I don't know if there's
We
any,
used to, I think.
well,
Yeah,
well, I say we, it's the
Yeah.
village,
yes,
that.
yeah, yeah.
But this just. The state pushing it down for starters is ridiculous, and then
Mhm.
I get doing it by population, but without taking into account other factors, this is a unreachable target, I think. And I don't think we can force the town to build the units anyway.
Right, it's an aspirational target. And also, there are many factors that we could have taken into account, but that really would have pushed numbers, in between communities. At the end, the total for the county would have been the same. And we wanted to do this in such a way that it was easily transparent. People could understand how we did the calculation. And although there's other variables, it seemed the most transparent and straightforward. And certainly you'll see that there are proportional things that Waterville's goals and Belvedere's goals are below Johnson's. And that the larger communities like Morristown and Stowe have fairly significant targets. But again, it's not really about the types of housing that's being developed. And there are some opportunities, perhaps in Johnson in the future, with the Vermont State Colleges, depending on the evolution of that property.
Have you been in contact with them at all?
We have talked to them. We have had just very general discussions about what direction. I think they're trying to understand the landscape across their properties.
Mhm.
Looking at the big picture, this isn't a directive, but it's more of a direction for our planning commissions to no longer create 2-acre restrictions, but to promote the 0.2 acre legislative home act, and to make it easier for more housing, high density within water, sewer, etc. Town sewer service areas, trying to promote housing in certain areas as opposed to undoing the trend. When we used zoning for many years had like 2-acre minimums, 5-acre minimums. And it sounds like this is more of a direction to try to shift away from that.
Well, I think what this is really to highlight the fact, and Seth can talk more about some of the zoning elements, but the fact that there is not adequate housing in the state and we are in a housing crisis. Even at LCPC, when we hire a new person, that person has struggled to find a place to live. And I understand that is true across employers throughout the county. And do you want to add some on the zoning front, Seth, or?
Sure.
Or just some general statements that
Yeah.
sound more plenary than.
Well, I think that the feedback you're providing is similar to what many of the communities are saying about there being other factors and significant challenges to meeting the targets. In some sense, the next step of this in addressing the targets in the regional plan and in the municipal plan is actually an opportunity to address some of those barriers. We do in our regional plan talk quite a bit about the topography barriers to development in the region. About we have narrow river valleys and then hills and mountains on the other side that leads a very limited area. Floodplains, infrastructure limitations. One thing that communities could consider, for example, using these targets for if you are developing funding applications for infrastructure, be that water, sewer, road, highway, noting how that infrastructure might contribute to meeting the target. Some discussions that have happened in other communities in the town of Wolcott. In Wolcott, we're working on their town forest. Instead of doing just a pure conservation easement, they included a set aside for a Habitat for Humanity lot that required some extra effort on behalf of the funder and behalf of the town. Having a policy backdrop to do that would give the community more standing in those discussions with a funder if that is something you wanted to pursue. For example, I think the big change in the landscape that we'll talk a bit more about when we get to the maps, the changes in the Act 250 reform legislation that provide potential exemptions in some areas that have critical infrastructure as well as water and sewer. Those exemptions were not in place in any of the past land use regulation discussions in Johnson. There is now a somewhat different dynamic where there could be, by a community taking some steps to have land use regulations on the local level, freeing up people from what can sometimes be the more expensive state level Act 250 process. And that, I think, is a discussion that is going to unfold differently in every community, but is something certainly to consider as you're moving forward. And I think what we are finding is that those state level regulations, be they Act 250 or the A&R technical permits, have as much of an impact, if not more, than local zoning on housing supply. And I think the fact that many communities in Memorial County don't have zoning, but do still have those state Act 250 and technical permits, and we have similar housing issues as in the Northwest and Chittenden and Central, kind of point to that. But these are, again, think of them as sort of your aspirational target, the measure of how are things going, and to evaluate, how are things going and what are those barriers to, are they things you can address at the local level, or are they things that are just fixed in the topography or fixed in, policies that are beyond the state's control?
Right, and if you're interested in the document that the Vermont Housing Needs Assessment, if you just Google Vermont Housing Needs Assessment, you'll get right to the state document. And I think it's a very valuable thing to read because it talks about the economic pressures and the challenges for employers and for young people in finding places to live. Do we have other housing questions?
Proceed.
Proceed, okay. Great, and
Guy,
aspirational.
I am this guy.
There might be synonyms, I don't know, but so the as you know, you have a land use map in the Johnson Town and Village plan. You also have a designated village center within Johnson. So when Act 181 was passed, this is the Act 250 reform bill. There was a lot in it. There's a lot of pages in that bill. It changed the world for regional planning quite significantly. It used to be that we would work on a regional plan, make sure we met the statutory requirements. Our board would approve the plan, and that would be it. Now, after our board approves the regional plan, it has to go to the new Land Use Resource Board, which is the entity that replaced the Act 250 board. And we have to, one of the things we have to do is update our land use maps. We had done our land use maps based on categories that we work with the staff and the board. And so we want to make sure this says, remember, this says draft. I'm not telling you what you need to do. This is a working draft document. This is just to get the ideas in front of you. We need to update the land use map, and that means meeting with all the communities to work with you to make sure that the land use map reflects the planning goals and the aspirations of your community. So it's got our land use map. I think we can just hold it up. And do you want to talk about it, Seth? Do I even have it the right well?
Yeah,
First of all,
it's
okay.
north-south, so.
Okay. And I can, if people can see the screen, if I hold it up like this, I think.
Exactly, see, so, sort of a little more background. In Act 181, in addition to creating this framework where the regional plans will be now reviewed by the state Land Use Review Board, the statute also outlines the specific planning areas that will have to appear and be used for each of the 11 future land use maps. So prior to that, every region developed the criteria for the planning areas. We now all have to use the same and then translate those into our region and how they reflect the needs of the municipalities in each region. While we have
You want to hand this around while we're
let's pass it
talking, because it's easier for you to look at it if you just pass it around. And this is our land use map, and this is very similar to what you've got so far. The green is conservation, the teal is working rural lands, and we haven't figured out the regular rural. And if you look at Johnson here, the map is not dissimilar.
Yes.
So obviously this is very preliminary. We're just trying to give you the gist.
Yeah. So one thing that as that goes around may jump out at you, the existing map, you'll see there's this, especially in the center, is mapped as just center. And there in 2016, that was sort of the directive from our board. When the centers and the old map are divided based on what kind of infrastructure is available, but does not differentiate much in terms of details of land use within the centers. A significant piece of 181 is more refinement at the regional plan level within the centers. In a way, that means more sort of that detail done at the regional level. The other side of that is that these maps will now be the basis for the village center and downtown designations which are the tools that Johnson has used in the past for things like tax credits, community development block grants, some of your infrastructure investment. Under prior statute, those areas were drawn very closely to the commercial and civic core. And some of you may recall there was an effort in Johnson to expand that to include areas of Railroad Street, to include up to Parker and Stearns and the old depot, some of the areas up College Hill to McClellan and the President's House, that were not able to move forward based on the old statute. Under the new statute, those areas where those that are eligible for those designations will now be based on the future land use maps of the regional plan and can be broader. So we tried to, in that map, capture those areas that you have talked about wanting to see added to that designation, so that.
Seth, can I interrupt you just
Go
for a
for
sec?
it, Duncan.
So when you say you're actually talking about the trustees, because the town has nothing to do with the village land use piece except through the planning commission, which will be part of that. So the request to expand that designation didn't come from the select board, it came from the trustees.
It's in your town and village plan. It's actually identified as a significant goal to expand.
Could well be. But,
Yeah,
But
right.
the impetus for that came from the trustees, not this
Mhm.
board.
The planning commission did explore that. A year and a half ago.
Yeah.
The potential to expand.
So there's more ability to expand that as outlined in the municipal plan at this point.
How come some areas are white?
That's because we haven't filled them in. Yeah.
So there's also moving kind of outside, there's 3 categories of rural that are prescribed. There's the rural conservation area, there's the rural working lands, forest, ag area, and then there's the rural general. The statute of the kind of difference in terms of policy of those 3 areas is left somewhat to the regional level. So what you'll see on the map is the conserved areas, lands that are conserved at a state level. The working lands, forest, ag are larger parcels. And the white areas are the ones that are likely going to be the rural general. What that means for a landowner or community, I think there is going to be somewhat less of a difference in actual policy and more in map appearance at this point. But that is a distinction that at the state level needs to happen. Something else, an important consideration for Johnson is that these maps will also become the basis for potential future Act 250 tiers, specifically the tier 1A and 1B, which will provide exemptions from Act 250. So a tier 1B, an exemption for up to 50 units as opposed to the current 10. To be eligible for a tier 1B area, an area needs to be mapped on the future land use map as either a village center, downtown center, or a village area, which think of village area versus village centers. Village area is the expansion where the village might expand the village center where it already is, or an area planned for growth. A catch on those expansion areas, those 2 the village.
But he's talking village idea, not
Village idea, not village municipality, village
Right.
planning area or area planned for growth, is that there needs to be available infrastructure and there needs to be local zoning and subdivision, not one or the other. So you will see on Johnson's map, there are not a mapped village planning area or an area planned for growth. What there is a very sort of that tannish area, the transition zone. And so that is the area where growth might happen, where expansion of development patterns, infrastructure expansions might happen absent those two other planning areas.
The transition info.
Transition in,
Okay.
yeah. And so because there are some discussions going on in both the town and the village about how to adapt and respond to the impacts of the flooding, what the future might look like. On this map, it's a fairly large area because these maps are going to be in place for, you know, at least the 8-year planning cycle. So the idea being providing enough flexibility for the community to have that discussion at the local level about what would be appropriate without kind of constraining it by drawing the rural area in too tight to the existing development area. Because we recognize that those will be, you know, fairly substantial discussions that will have to involve the planning commission and the select board and the trustees.
So there's a lot of land on there that's in current use.
Yeah.
And the deal is, if the state wants people to open this land up for development, they're gonna have to do away with the fines. Because if I sell a piece of property and it's in current use, I have to pay a substantial amount of money. So if they want people to develop property, you want to sell a lot to build a house on it. You know, you don't want to pay basically a fine.
Yeah. It's
So if you're going to have development, they're going to have to waive those.
That's helpful feedback that we'll share. I think that you know, there's a lot of variables here, and so that's helpful feedback. But also well beyond our mapping, you know, that's more for the housing discussion than for mapping. But what is interesting about the maps is a ton of Lamoille counties in current use. Absolutely, just a tremendous amount. And it was very important to us that there is land in current use that's also high value forest blocks. And we wanted to make sure to map that as working lands rather than conservation, because that really seems to be what the communities are aiming for. And the reason we're here today is that we do have a tight time frame. We need to get our new regional plan and our new land use map approved by the new land use resource board before the end of December 2026. If we don't meet that deadline, all of the communities in the region lose the designated villages and downtowns. So there's a pretty big onus, which working backwards, because there's a whole appeal process built into the land use I can't even say more of the land use resource board. So we've figured out that we need to be done by May of 2026 with this whole process and have our board have approved the plan and the maps.
Could you have our conservation commission give input on this now?
Sure. I mean, that, you know, what we're really trying to do is kick this off with the select board and have you go through your processes with planning commissions, conservation commission, and we're happy to meet with all those.
They just might see something we're not seeing, so
Yeah.
get their input.
Yep.
I assume that you guys are gonna be working with the planning commission on
Yes.
this
Yes.
concept.
Yes.
I would have one comment, and that is, I think the village corporate boundaries should be put on the map.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Because it has all of the questions about water and sewer allocation, et cetera, really tied directly to the corporate boundaries.
Yeah.
So therefore really need to be, if you're looking at it from a planning perspective, that's gonna be on there.
And we fully, no, go ahead.
I am perhaps a sewer extension.
That's that,
Sewer extensions as well.
yes,
The town.
the town sewer service areas, yeah.
Yeah. And it's our intent to work with the planning commissions for sure, but we wanted to make sure to kick it off with the legislative body to get a sense of your reaction before we started going down roads with the various other bodies in the town.
Questions, these are following like current, like geopolitical boundaries, property lines. Are those, once this plan, will those coding be set in stone as this plan is accepted, or will there be flexibility between regional plans?
There is, so our old map, you will notice, does not follow.
And we can leave this with you.
Yeah, it's not
We'll leave
follow,
this with you.
parcel lines. It follows to the same degree. It does in some cases, but it also follows geography. The statewide process did tie the planning areas to parcel lines and boundaries and other political boundaries. There is a process to do minor amendments to the maps without a full new land use review board process, but major changes would need to go back before the land use review board.
Just thinking about like our existing sewer lines, you know, eventually they're gonna land and you might change color,
Yeah.
but. You know, it's like as we put in that new line in the industrial park, everything uphill and beyond and those future properties are now super developable. That they can tie, right, like.
Right, and
Yeah.
we right, and so the conversation we'll have with the planning commission is that one of the categories is an enterprise zone, you know.
Yeah.
And should that, it's likely that an industrial park area, like I think the gravel pit is already marked on there in that color.
And if there are areas, because there is language in the statute about the transition zone being areas where you may see infrastructure extended and the rural areas are not that enabling. If there are areas that immediately jump out that are mapped in, you know, especially the rural conservation or rural working lands where there's contemplation of, you know, town sewer service area expansion, there would be a benefit at this point to include that in the transition zone, provided it also meets the other criteria about, you know, strip development and linear sprawl and such. But that would be feedback that this is a very good time to provide.
Right, and we also, I mean, we've already found things that don't fit into the categories, and we have agreed with Northern Vermont Development Area that we're just gonna call the asbestos mine, and not put it in the category, because it doesn't really fit into any of the categories. And Chittenden is doing the same with some properties that they have, like the Ethan Allen firing range, so.
Next question is something that's never really been well established, maybe it has in your world, is there's this animosity around zoning, right? No one's ever presented what zoning like looks like. Like, what is the bare minimum of zoning to meet the exceptions of Act 250? Act 250 is laborious, it's a hard process, it's often prevents people from moving forward. But if we knew what the bare minimum was for zoning, that discussion might be more fruitful rather than what it's currently been. Do you know what that is for the Act 250 to no longer fall under the Act 250 rule?
That's a much broader discussion, but we would be happy to have that with the community. It's really dependent on the perspective of the select board, because we always try and, you know, follow your lead to make sure that we're not taking you places you don't want to go. But given the new Act 250 exemptions, it might be a very helpful discussion for you.
We have a form-based code that might be pretty close already.
Right, but you also only have form-based code in a particular area of the community, and that's one of the challenges. If you wanted the Act 250 exemptions to apply, like property owned by the college and stuff, that form-based code or some kind of zoning light or whatever you want to call it would have to extend further out.
Any further questions?
Okay, and thanks so much for your time, and we're really just trying to kick off the process. So thank you so much for bearing with us.
Thank you.
Take certain types of people to deal with what you folks do. Because they're not.
I think that's a good type of.
It's an extra compliment,
Thank you,
right? Dealing with the
Thank
state
you.
of Vermont, with all of this cumbersome stuff.
Yeah.
That they put upon all of them. And how you can get in and out of it is just beyond me.
Yeah, we try to navigate it best we can for the council.
Right, and that's you can keep the draft. There will be more, and we're getting a brand new big printer tomorrow, so we're gearing up for this exercise, right? So thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up is the weather vane.
Why do you want that back?
Are they the back?
No,
I don't get a vote on that. You were missing.
Yeah, I know, I didn't even know about it. Nobody texted me.
Today,
Nobody told me about it.
today the board received a formal request, I believe, by the historical society for them to come and pick up their weather vane.
Yeah, so I was at the meeting. Do you want me to give you the synopsis?
synopsis
of
would
what
be
was
great.
said? Okay, so, and I didn't know that you didn't know about the meeting.
Only
Everybody,
4 people decided that whole thing.
everybody was wondering where
Yeah.
you were.
That would've been-
Apparently you didn't get the memo. So, the net result of the discussion was the board, the Historical Society board was concerned about putting the current weather vane out into the elements. I explained that I thought there were things that could be done to protect it. But Dean West came up with what may or may not be a good idea, but I'll throw it out there anyway. His idea essentially was, as some of you may not know, when the town sold the Lowell Lecture Hall, or the former town hall, to the Vermont Studio Center, in the deed, they specifically reserved out the weather vane and the monuments. The monuments have been moved, they're out here. The weather vane is still there. So several years ago, we met with Gary Clark, Jim McDowell, and George Perlman to look at how one would remove the weather vane from the current Lowell Lecture Hall. And in the process of doing that, we went up into the tower, and lo and behold, there's this old weather vane up there that nobody knows for sure, but probably was on the Lowell Lecture Hall, the town hall. And the Vermont Studio Center very graciously donated that weather vane to the Historical Society. The Historical Society nonetheless still came to the select board and said, we think it would be a good idea still to remove the weather vane from the building. And, display it as a historical item at the Historical Society. The board at that time decided not to invest in doing that. So here we are.
Invest in what? Taking the old one down. Taking the copper one off.
Yes.
Okay, we couldn't do it because of Act 250, as you recall.
No, I don't recall that.
Yeah, we tried to do that. And they stopped the whole process because we were gonna take it down and put a facsimile in its place. We were set to do that, but they told us we couldn't do it because they'd have to open up Act 250. No joke. But anyway, that has nothing to do with what the business at hand we have here right now.
Well, okay. And was that because the Vermont Studio Center is subject to Act 250?
Probably.
Anything that happened?
Anything changed to that building. And removing that weather vane was gonna possibly open up a Pandora's box.
Did the town ever get a jurisdictional opinion on whether or not removing
No.
the weather vane would?
Not that I know of.
Because I can't imagine that constitutes a significant change under Act 250.
Me neither, but that's the story we were given.
Let's just get a day out.
But that would certainly be one way to do it. We don't have to do that tonight. The bottom line for tonight is the Historical Society would like to take the weather vane back and either display it in the building, in the Holcomb House building somewhere They're also still open to the idea of displaying it in the library, but they don't want it exposed to the elements and they don't want to paint it. They, so right now, that weather vane is in its pure natural state, if you will. It's basically a wrought iron weather vane as it would have been built in the 1840s or 1850s. So the Historical Society feels pretty strongly that painting it would degrade the historical value considerably. And they're open to displaying it in the library if the library has room for it, but they want it inside. They don't want it outside exposed to the elements. So that's the bottom line from the Historical Society perspective. And again, Dean came up with the idea that since the Studio Center has already made it known that they're going to be doing something different with the law lecture hall, this might be a good time for the town to deal with its deeded right to that weather vane and remove it before there's a change of ownership
Right.
to the property.
The weather vane that is mounted on the building.
The copper weather vane.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm gonna throw a crazy idea out there. Historical Society can come get the weather vane if they want. And you and Mike can work on contacting the Studio Center to remind them that we own the weather vane there.
They know we own it.
Well, George certainly does. I don't know if the new executive director would know that or not. Probably not.
Well, Jim's still there.
Jim is still there, yeah, and George is frequently around, right? Yeah. But yeah, I mean, I would be happy to, we can get a copy of the deed and.
It's a quick online form now. The JOs are kind of automatic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it would be, I can tell you right now, it's not gonna be a cheap process to remove that weather vane. Cause it's up there. I don't know that you could reach it with a standard, lull type unit or not. Well, Jim might know because they did all the work on the building a few years ago, painting and they re-roofed the cupola and do you remember, Kathy, if they reached that with
I just remember the original one, it was Doug McCarty climbing up there.
yeah.
In a way, no one would do.
Yeah, I don't really want to hear about it.
I'm sure it's people, Jack.
I'm catching up to
Go up and get it.
Yeah.
They're working on a church install.
Yeah, there's probably ways to do
Oh,
it, but those guys aren't cheap.
No,
Um,
but hiring a big enough crane to come in isn't cheap either.
No, it isn't. No, but I think the first step, if you're right about the Act 250 thing, we could certainly request a jurisdictional opinion and get the question answered. And that's probably the first step.
Right.
And simultaneously, we can let the Studio Center know, that. I don't know what the Studio Center's plan is for the building. They've certainly.
Didn't they want the town to buy it?
The town will take it if you want to give it to them.
I heard recently from an employee who was going to remain unnamed, that the offer would be to give it to the town for $1.
We'll take it.
Wouldn't we be getting into real estate transactions?
No, we'd be getting the old town hall.
I'm saying this could fit under executive session. We don't need to joke about it. Right
Yeah, no, we don't, but we don't need to make a decision on, for the immediate purposes of tonight. I think that the Historical Society has decided they would like to get it back. And again, they remain open to having it displayed, in a public place somewhere, but they just don't want it exposed to the elements.
Well, with the demise of the National Weather Service, I
We
do
might
think
need
it's
it.
important that we have a working weather vane in town.
Well, the interesting thing about that weather vane, the points of the compass are scrolls. They're not north, south, east, west. They're scrolls. And Dean doesn't know, and maybe a little bit of historical research could be done, but that may have been a religiously significant weather vane, because that building was originally built as a church. I think the town acquired it in 1850 or something like that. It wasn't out there that long. as a church, but. So anyway, I don't know if that answers everybody's questions,
With
but
the other weather vane, they're gonna come pick it up sometime. The one downstairs.
yes, I think they would like to get it, and I know, the glass globe is in the furnace room and the vane. The wind vane part is also in the furnace room.
But we don't know where the plaque is. That was the issue.
Oh, that's the other piece of it. We paid $132. The Historical Society paid $132 to have this really nice plaque made. And I suspect, I don't know, but I suspect when the contractors cut that up with a sawzall and threw it in the dumpster,
Where was the plaque?
it was right on the roof of the cupola.
I imagine it's probably in. It's not in the furnace room,
Mhm.
and it's not downstairs.
Well, I haven't looked downstairs. I don't know. But if I had to guess, I would say they cut it up, threw it in the dumpster, but I don't know
That
for
was,
sure.
that happened all in one day. All of a sudden it was like, oh. That was probably the most rugged doghouse anybody's ever seen.
Yeah, and I remember telling you that unfortunately, they never knew, but the roof of that was separate. And came apart to get it through the door, because that was the only way. I had to build it in two pieces to get it through the door.
Peter, it appears as if that was fake news. What you just said.
Ah,
I feel
really?
like we're going down a rabbit hole here.
They're not gonna disband the actual weather service.
I'm reassured.
Is the board comfortable with Duncan and Mike working with Tom to form the studio center of what's owed, what's owned? Board's comfortable with the Historic Society getting their own weather vane? And is the board comfortable with paying $130 for a plaque if it can't be found? It's
Yeah.
well within our procurement policy. I don't think we need a motion for that. Is there anything else? Weather vane might come up again in 2 weeks.
The cupola might come up. They're talking about trying to display it. And we talked about it a little today. The only way they could display it is probably horizontally, not vertically. So if they display it horizontally, they aren't going to need a cupola.
Yeah.
Weather vane has excellent fishing chips.
All right. I think we can move on to the next one. Thank you, Mike. Next up is grading Legion Field. Tom, you want to take that one away?
Yeah, so. Legion Field typically hosts Tuesday Night Live, however, this year they're going to be moving to Oakland Park. And if we were going to do any work on Legion Field, this would be the most, the year with the least disruption. Being that there's already gonna be a construction site there, and we know that it's 14 inches out, I believe. Either 8 or 14 inches out, anyway, but if we're gonna do anything, now's the time to do it, and whether we add fill or. Take away, I don't think it matters, but by disrupting that material, we have to get a general construction permit and do it, and it's a commitment. But I think it would also mean that this summer Legion Field would be limited use, and maybe we change the location of the ice rink, so it's not right in the middle, maybe we put it in the back or on the side, or. So that way Legion Field can remain open while we just grade an area, I don't think that we have to decide it tonight, but if we're gonna do it. We need to decide probably before the end of May.
Just to move a little bit of dirt, you're gonna get a general construction permit for that.
From the Vermont Department of Fire Safety.
Good grief.
I think this could be a simple question. Is the board open to the concept of leveling out something for the ice rink or not? If not, there's no point wasting time. If they are, maybe we could ask Tom to come back with either a cost or maybe talk with Jason, see if they're available to do it. And also you could work with Tuesday Night Live and the bread oven to make sure we're not.
Yeah, I have a couple of things to say about that. First of all, we are going to be moving the bandstands on the other side of the field on and back. Because the new building is really kind of buried in the ground. So that's gonna happen. I don't know. We're trying to figure out how to make that happen without costing the town anything. So we can raise the money.
Like over where the backstop is?
Yes.
In that area.
Backstop's coming down. Nobody uses it, and
That's great.
there is no more electricity at the bandstand. The new building, has obviated that.
Already?
Yeah,
The plan was to run the electricity through the foundation, so when the building was put back, electricity was gonna be put back.
okay, well, right,
Yeah.
fine, but, if we move it to the opposite corner, it's, the other back corner, we're gonna have to get power to it back there. Which would mean that we could trench it from the existing drop diagonally across the field and grab it, do that now. Or when regrading the field.
Isn't there a water line or sewer line that goes across that?
There's a
field?
water line and a sewer line, they're well known, we know where they are. The unfortunate thing is they're both fairly shallow. I think the water line is down. You remember, Doug, you were on the board when that froze.
It's deep enough that it's not deep enough that it didn't freeze.
Right, but now it has insulation on it. But anyway, still, it's not very deep, as Doug said. Which may be a problem in the future, which is why we certainly don't want to put the ice rink on top of that. So that would mean that the ice rink would go down more toward, the west end of the field.
So without getting crazy deeply into the nitty gritty, my question to the board was, is there an appetite to level out a spot or no?
Yes, you should.
Yes.
So there's an appetite. And as
Do
the
we
board-
believe there's gonna be a skating rink?
What's that?
Do we believe there's gonna be a skating
Yeah,
rink
Brian
back
says
in
he-
there?
Brian says he will maintain it.
Yeah,
If it was level?
we need a new liner and some other
but
things.
it's gotta be flat, I mean, it's gotta be level, because right now it's 7 inches out.
But
Yeah.
for tonight, does any board member want to take this on, or are they comfortable with, Tom just working with getting a number from a contractor or talking to Jason and talking with the committees to make sure no toes are stepped on, it works out for the flow?
Oh,
I don't-
on that.
Yeah, I don't think we need to micromanage
No,
all of this. We kind of need a plan and a cost.
Yeah, and I
And,
think.
and if we don't like the
Howard,
plan, that's
Is that ice rink okay where it is?
I don't know. I don't know, Mike. I'd have to look.
I think it is.
It's still out there right now, so
Yeah,
you'll be able to see
but
it.
I just got the site. I've been begging people for the current site plan for the new project. And I finally went up to the architect this afternoon, banged on the door, and Greg gave me a copy of the engineering site plan. So I now know exactly where the sewer line is and the water line is, so we can get that figured out. I'm traveling tomorrow morning at the crack of dawn, I'll be back in a week, and at that point I can get on.
The issue before with the water line freezing was that they were making parking.
Yeah, we park cars
There.
on top.
So it really wasn't that the ice rink was on top of the water line. It was that they were plowing right up to the ice rink and
That's true.
Are you saying you can't hear, Casey?
No, I'm saying you could condense I'm trying to condense this, just to add the point that there is a Legion Field group of all the folks working on it and interested in it, and they can figure out the details. So I'm trying to support your appetite.
Get it moving?
Yeah.
I'm trying not to cut people off as well, but the parking, all of this needs to be considered. I don't want somebody's
Yeah.
water to freeze because of a skate rink. Historical knowledge is important.
If that water line had been buried 6 feet like it should have been, it probably wouldn't have had any freezing.
there would have been a problem.
I think this is more of a, do we want to do it this summer or not?
Please.
So
Yes, we'd like to get it done this summer.
could the land be stable by June when the pizza oven does bakes?
Well, I think the ultimate goal would be to try to form, when Howard gets back. Have Howard, TNL, Red Oven. And any other interested groups, and just call like a informal get together with the site plan that Howard now has and say, guys, where do you want this ice rink? I mean, that way everyone's in the room, and I think if we just agree where it is, I'm sure the road crew and Brian will put the ice rink anywhere. But if we disagree on this, somebody points where to go, I'll get the permits and we
Oh.
can even.
Yeah, if they already have a booked summer because they're taking on too many projects, we might need to hire somebody. I don't know.
Yeah,
We've got, there's probably a pretty good pile already of dirt that was excavated over there.
know,
Just,
Incidentally, I spoke to Greg Tatro about it, and he said, hell, I'll level it.
Exactly, like it's
So, you know,
we have
Wonderful.
12,000 yards coming out of Holmes Meadow that we have to leave within the village somewhere. And we're planning on using some of that to like backfill around the library. And so there's like a lot of cool things that are getting ready to be announced. And so I think if you guys say yes, within the next month or two, I'm gonna come to you and say, hey, this is this. Hey, this is this. I think. if you say
let's
yes
just
to
move
that-
forward,
make it happen.
go on to the next thing.
There's an
all
appetite.
right, I'm all for it. You're doing good. Keep it up.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Next up, car charger. Tom, this was one that you had added.
Yeah, so this is, so the car charger here is, as you know, it's about 10 years old, I believe. It's not a fast charger and it's kind of in a state of, I don't want to say disrepair, but it's getting close. One side doesn't work. The wire's kind of draped over the thing, doesn't look great. The pad doesn't work anymore. It no longer connects with the phone service. I can't disconnect the phone service because it's in the village name. It's like, it's just, the whole thing is like, it just feels very like band-aided and hobbles gobble wobbles. And at some point it's gonna break. And right now, I talked with Eric today. It doesn't seem like we should be advertising this on the state's, hey, we have a car charger here. When it's kind of antiquated, and can I take that off the list of like available car chargers now that we have them at the Jolly? And then I just feel like there's this huge liability of what happens if a car, if this last side breaks while a car's charging, are we on the hook for that car when we know that it's already kind of half broken? You know, that it's just in poor shape. And do we pay to fix a car charger that no one was really using in the first place? And so that's where I asked Eric, he's the primary user, and what we kind of came up with, and he's gonna run it across his board, so I don't think we need to check their meeting next week, is just the idea that he turns it on when he gets to work and then shuts the breaker off when he leaves, so he's the only one who's using it. So it's no longer available to the public, so that way it kind of releases liability. And that he would cover it with a contractor bag when he's not using it. My biggest concern is what happens if someone goes to use it and we buy their car, like are we know that it's broken and we're letting people use it.
Have we
Well,
asked the LCT? There's like a liability there because there's no exchange of funds.
I have not asked, but we are advertising that it's there, you know, we're inviting people to use it.
Yeah, I was just saying, like, from a liability standpoint, I would assume the LCT could answer it, but they might just turn us to our town attorney for
Well, the other
thousands of
question I would-
dollars.
The other question I would have is, I think in the past, this has come up numerous times over the past few years, and you may not have been involved, but I think Brian, your predecessor, might have been involved. I think the board even told him to get it fixed. Yeah, and it obviously didn't. Do we have any idea what would be involved to fix the other side so it worked right?
Yeah, so after the flood, one side, the flood destroyed however it talks to the world. It no longer tells us how much is being used. So the town and village, what used to be the town paid for electricity 100%. Now we're no longer getting that communication, something's broken in there.
That's not exactly right. As I understand it, that line comes to this building, which is metered, and the town and village both pay
Correct.
the electric on it.
And so, but I don't think we know how much of it. I think we're just like paying the electric, we just split the electric bill. It's no longer like metering itself. And so the other thing is the wire, there's like a mechanical issue, and then there's a program issue. Gould Electric came in, I had them look at it when I first started, and then again, they came and checked it out. I can't remember when, but I don't know if you remember, it was board discussion within the last year and a half anyways. And so we got one side going, and I think that was $500 and some odd, and they said, yeah, it's not worth it to touch the other side. I can call them back out to look at it, but they have to take it all apart because there's something mechanically wrong that it's not sucking up the wires. And even though you put the breaker on, it just says error, and, you know, it's not charging out of that side.
so the only one that uses that is the village,
Yeah,
and we're still paying half of the fee.
I mean, I think,
Other people have used it.
yeah,
But most of the time, that vehicle is there. lately I'm talking about.
Yep.
So lately is the village. Why don't we just give it to the village?
I think that would solve, it would take, the concern I have is liability, if the town gave it to the village. That would make me happy.
I move the town give it
But
to the
it
village.
doesn't solve the problem. We're paying for half of the electricity for it
And
anyway.
we don't not gonna pay any more from here on out.
Well, how are you,
If we
you're
give
gonna
it
have
to
to
the
separately
village-
meter it then.
If we give it to the village, they can do whatever they want with it.
But it's connected right now electrically to the meter that serves this building. So we're
Well-
paying half of the electric on it.
Electric costs aside, I think Thomas said he's worried about
That's
liability.
what I said. We're paying half of the village fee on that. If they plug that in all day long. And it's there.
But
all
giving
day
it
long,
to them isn't gonna change that.
But it's
We're
gonna
still
get-
gonna pay for
It's
half
gonna
of
get
it.
the liability off of us for that charger.
Like what happens right now if Eric car, his car breaks, or the village car breaks, you know, are they gonna? Right now, we could be, you know, it's probably, to Evan's point, it's probably only $1,000, but. It's to me, it feels like an unnecessary risk that we should be addressing, right? Like when you own property and you see something. The broken window, right? When you see the broken window, you fix it. And right now, we have a broken window outside and how do we wanna fix it? And there's no wrong answer, but it should keep going like it is.
This is, you said, about 10 years old.
I think so, Duncan made it better.
The town got a grant for it
Years ago.
probably 15 years ago. I don't
It
know.
wasn't that far.
Yeah, it's about 10 years.
Is there anything to be said for replacing it with a newer unit?
I
Lost to spend the money.
personally sitting here, there's probably something to be said. I think there's a little bit of uncertainty of future location and everything, and it's a lot to chase with that if there is.
Right, yep, so I follow you,
Location.
right.
The library, great place for future electric car hookups.
Well, the municipal lot by the Mason, you know, right downtown.
So
There's one at the co-op, there's one down the Stewart's.
your recommendation is putting up a sign that says use at your own risk. I don't know if that holds water
I mean, it's,
legally,
Yeah.
but. You know, it's not fixing the broken window, it's kind of saying here's a broken window, possibly.
something better.
I
than
don't
that.
know if that really absolves the town from liability to personal car damage.
You could put up a sign that says not for public use.
Sounds like the.
There you go.
Fix is what Eric said. Right?
Yeah. And maybe an MOU with the village that if it breaks, if the charger breaks, we're not fixing it, and if your car breaks, we're not responsible. It's like, it's just hey, we're happy to continue with the electric, you know, as it is, that's okay, but. Just, this is what you're getting, this is what you're plugging into, you're plugging into an unknown.
I still rather give it to the village.
I'm not married to any one idea. If the village wants it, does Eric say the village does want it? I don't know.
They have, in the past, they never wanted it, but now they have an electric car. So. Eric's gonna take it up. I think if we could have if we could throw one or two ideas at them to say, hey, take this to your board, they might come up with more. But I think it would help facilitate their discussion if we had some unofficial idea to move forward.
All right, 3 ideas, throw them out.
I think a wonderful idea, one of 3, would be to take it offline to the public. And have Eric turn it on when he's using it and turn it off when he's done.
Yeah, the other idea is repair it or replace it. Do you have
Didn't you make a motion for us to give it to the village?
I did.
there was never a second. Oh. okay.
What was your motion?
To give it to the village.
Motion was to give it to
And
the
she's
village.
seconded it.
All right. Should have declared that motion dead. Any further discussion on giving it to the village? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All right,
All those opposed,
Nay.
the ayes have it.
And we're rid of it.
I feel like we're trying to give it to the village for that.
Can I just say one thing? We did get a grant for that. is it possible? Maybe it's not even possible anymore to check, but I guess I wouldn't want to give it to the village if the town still has some continuing responsibility for ownership and maintenance of it and its availability, because I don't know if that was an Efficiency Vermont grant or what it was, but it's possible that there are ongoing obligations to the town which would prevent us from legally transferring it to the village.
We could transfer it with those, the assumption of all ongoing obligations. But I'm sure the ongoing obligations are to the owner, not specifically to the town.
Or really the location was poor because of the flood,
Yeah,
and so that's a moot point.
Duncan's suggesting doing a little bit of research. Liability wise, and I'm okay with that if the board is.
If the village takes it, they assume that liability.
Okay,
See, it seems like we have the opportunity to think a little bit more about this because we don't even know if the village will accept the gift.
touche.
So,
Well,
Yeah, you voted for it.
I guess,
and then you made a very good point.
well, then we'll just tear it out.
I guess marching orders are there by motion, so,
We're not gonna maintain that.
I'm gonna
thing
do
anymore.
research before I say anything, but I'm sure somebody's watching, yeah. It'll come to me.
Hopefully.
Well, it would
I see
be-
Mark
it would be
Woodward's
useful
on.
to know whether or not they're interested in it. I mean, if the choice is take it out. Or
Yeah,
you can
sure.
take it over, maybe that becomes a simple question. I don't know, simple answer.
I think we're on to mowing. Thanks a lot, Adrian.
Thanks, Adrian. Appreciate that. I think I did hear you say second, actually, but he tried to kind of drown you out.
Yeah. All right, mowing RFP review and award. Tom has the 3 estimates in the packet. Are they actually mowing Grove Cemetery?
No.
Okay.
There are 2. Grove Cemetery, Beard Park, and. There was one more, I don't remember, the highway garage. That it is the understanding that they will be as needed.
Okay,
That. Maybe in the fall, we'll do a quick trim down Beard Park up and back, but most of the time the conservation commission does it. But it's there so that it's on part of the contract, so that they have to do it if we have to.
and these are apples to apples.
Right. They
The
all,
last one doesn't really list all the places, but it does. List the number, and for the public's sake. One number is 25,740 a year, one is 18,000 a year, and one is 17,400 a year. All that to say, I think we budgeted 15,000, but oddly enough, some of these are joint properties, so we don't even pay for the whole amount. That's in front of us.
yeah, that's why I think Rosemary and I made a guess one day in our office about what percentage of 18,000 was.
Oh
Well, it's half the municipal building, half
It'd
the,
be nice to have
Mill house.
amounts for each place.
What we'll do is I'll have them, one of them.
the first bid
Look it out.
breaks it out by, so it's like municipal office, that'd be 50-50, public works facilities, 50-50, mill house, 50-50. Obviously, the remainder, I believe, are solely within the town. So how would the select board like to proceed? Looking for a motion here.
I move we go with Robert and Sons one for a total of $18,000.
There's a motion on the floor. Is there a second? For clarity, hearing no second. The motion is gonna die. I'm not coming back to this one.
Is the turf edging and trimming, does that go with the Robert and Sons? It's on like a separate page?
It's because the report, the packet was two-sided,
Okay,
so I had to stick in 3 additional papers into a 2-sided document.
It's the RFP, right?
Yeah,
oh, okay.
so rather than cut off the contract in the back page. I put up RFPs.
So to Rosemary's point, I think we had the same problem last year. Where we had a bid. And I think we asked them to come back and say how much per location, because I may be totally out to lunch on this, but I think once we did that, we ended up picking another vendor because it actually cost the town a little bit less money based on the price per location. Am I way out to lunch on
I
this?
think that what they did is they delegated you and I to work on it. And then just you and I talked about it and then we ended up going to Roberts and Sons for that reason.
I think Robert and Sons has been doing it since I've been on the board.
They have been doing it for a long time. And this 18,000 was a big jump from.
They went from 9 to 18.
Yeah.
And we have one at $600 less.
We do, and that's the reason that I didn't second Mike's motion, is because strictly speaking, there's a low bid, and if, in my opinion, if we're gonna select something that's not the low bid, we should have a good reason.
That's how that bid's written.
I know, and that can be your reason, is that it's not detailed enough.
It's not detailed enough for me.
Still looking for a motion.
All that says is that they're gonna bid for Johnson 2025, 17,400 with their name and their two names and their telephone.
And
Now,
does
to me,
that
that's-
strictly meet the terms of the bid proposal in terms of submission?
I think that it does.
And you said that Isaac or Spalding Property Management is what the village uses.
No.
No, the other one.
Or Palmer.
We use the first one here.
Yeah.
Oh, boy.
We have dealt with Robert and Son for years. They've given us a good quality product. And so you're gonna go with somebody you don't know for $600, and then they turn in a bid like this?
I'm not saying that, Mike, I'm
Well, that's
saying
what
that.
you're implying.
Well, I'm saying that they were the low bid, and if we're
Yes,
not
I
gonna
know.
accept the low bid, in your reason of. It's Mickey Mouse, maybe enough to,
It's enough for me.
yeah, I know.
Adrian, you want to make a motion?
Yeah, I'll make a motion to go with Robert and Sons Lawn Care.
She didn't even second you last time. There's a motion on the floor. Is there a second?
What was your?
That's
full
the motion I made,
I know.
and you didn't second it.
Well, I heard more of you guys talk about it more, and I decided to go with them.
So all you had to do was second it.
She wanted more information. She got more information. She made her mind up.
Yeah.
I never heard of that in all the years I've been on.
Could I offer?
You were on the board with Nat, who voted against his own motion somehow.
Has her motion been seconded yet?
Her motion has not been seconded. I'm looking for a second.
Can I offer a friendly amendment to the motion?
As long as you second it.
I would be willing to second if it's seconded, if it's accepted. And only Adrian can say whether.
I will second Adrian's motion. Did you get that, Donna?
Yeah.
Further discussion. You can go.
I'd still like to offer a friendly amendment,
Yep.
and you guys can accept it or not. My friendly amendment would be, we have used Robert and Sons for 15 years, probably, a good long time. And that their proposal was more detailed than the low bid proposal.
I'm good with that. Is that a friendly?
You just want to call out that their bid was lower?
This is.
He wants to call out that their bid was more detailed.
Oh.
And that we have a historical relationship with them.
Sure.
I'm good with that. Friendly amendment and motioner and seconder. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed.
You're not gonna oppose it?
All those opposed. The ayes have it.
There was a motion on the floor.
Okay.
Never seen that.
All right, on to the library relocation. Tom, you want to take that one? There's a write-up in the packet. I gotta rip my packet apart here so that I
The project is really taking off. almost all permits, we're just finalizing, the state route 1111 permit, with the emergency management plan and the traffic plan. And there is nobody at AOT, who can recall a longer 2-lane shutdown than what they are permitting in Johnson. It's very complicated, but it's happening. And we had a meeting on Friday with all the utilities, and we made a coordination plan to meet OSHA, and so that we have various units in and out, and it's such a well-oiled machine, and everybody who stepped up to the plate has approached this as, wow, this is a big project. How do we do it? And it's amazing how everybody has making it happen. It's been really fun. And it's good. We have some deadlines that are due to get things together in the next week that are going to be a little hectic, but I think we're just going to keep going, keep doing it. And everybody's been volunteering, and our contractors and subcontractors have just all been making every deadline meet, and it's really, really impressive. I mean, it's been fun.
I'm gonna have 2 questions, but I'm gonna make a motion to authorize Eben as chair and or Tom as administrator to sign contracts for the building movers and architectural services.
Second.
Ooh,
Who wants the third?
Mike was
Mike was quicker
half
to
a
draw.
second in front of me.
Quick to the draw. Okay, further discussion.
So am I gonna change that one too?
There's a motion by Duncan and a second by Mike. Is there any further discussion? You said you had 2 questions.
we can
Oh,
dispense with these motions first.
okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Fine.
All those opposed, and the ayes have it.
My 2 questions were, do we know yet what the actual Green Mountain Power estimate is to change
No, we just made it more complicated for them on Friday too. They were really close, and then we found out, because of the AOT permit changed. So now we have limited, we only have 3 hours, 3-lane shutdown. And then we're at 1-lane traffic before and after. And so we have to have flaggers, on site from 9 PM till 15's open, so it could be 12 hours, and rather than the town subcontract our own flaggers, we have 4 utilities right there that all have flagging crews. Who all know how to work with bucket trucks, so we're all familiar with the process of taking down and putting up lines, so Green Mountain Power is going to be providing their own flagging crew for all 12 hours for everybody, putting it back up and putting it back down, which is a huge lift for us, and
no pun intended.
yeah. And so they're coming back with that, but I will say that we're still significantly under budget on this project. We went really high when we put our first preliminary budget together, and we're making, there's a building moving down the street, and we're still doing it for cheaper than building a new building. Like, it's just mind-boggling to me. Yeah.
So my request to you would be, as soon as you find out what that is, you communicate that to the board. You're probably already gonna do that, but I would just, I'm dying to know. How much it's gonna cost us.
Well,
Move those utilities.
we're all waiting. And I told him, I was like, if you don't get the bill to us Monday, we're not paying you, and we have to pay you before you start work. So the next time we pay you is April 21st, so you might need to get approval from your supervisor to start work before. It's like this, there's a huge rush to get all those bills in today, because of all the contracts you have to pay them before they do the work. And I was like, guys, we meet every other week, so if we don't have it Monday, we're not paying you for another 2 weeks, but you gotta do work.
The other question I had, and I apologize, maybe this has already been dealt with. Well, I was absent without leave for my health issues. Where are we on the process of either having a owner's representative or a clerk of the works? Is anything happening on that?
So we are waiting, yes, we will have a clerk of the works. Right now, we're waiting until everyone I talked to who prepares clerk of the work is usually a percentage of the total project. It's how they bill out for like project management or clerk of the works. As soon as those final architectural drawings are done, this project has kind of taken on a life of its own, and I think what we need to do is slow down and think about it as two totally different projects. And I think, had we not had this deadline of April 26th to move the building, everything would have happened much differently. But we had a deadline that was moving faster than anyone was ready for, and if we delay from that April 26th date, it costs us $72,000. Because the next time the building movers could move it was in September, and at $600 a day fine. It was adding up to about 72,000, so we had to get it done. And we got it done, you know, we had 2 months, we put it together and it's great. What that meant is the architectural drawings for the addition weren't done yet, so you can't put the project out to bid, which means you can't get a clerk of the works price back because it's based on the construction costs of that addition. And so we were just like, we're waiting for as soon as the architect finishes those drawings, it's gonna be put out to GC, and then we take that to the clerk of the works, and we're probably gonna get 5 or 6 different bids. But nobody can bid on a project that they don't know how much it costs. And it's just been a lot of like all this stuff up in the air. And so finally it was like, you know what, the addition is, we're just gonna get the building there and we're gonna take a deep breath and stop. And then we're gonna make and start over again of a separate project. But we have this deadline of April 26th that we have to get the building there. It's gonna cost us $600 a day. And those dollies are leaving on the 27th to go to New York City. So we're like, if we don't move it on that day, we're not getting those dollies back.
Yeah, so you've answered my question. The idea of a clerk of the works is still very active.
We need one
Okay.
like yesterday.
Good, good. That's all I really
Yeah.
needed to know. All I really wanted to
Yeah.
know.
Is there any talk about making like a list of who's allowed to be there the day of?
Nobody. So this is VOSHA's moves that are this publicized are, VOSHA will be present, right? And so at 7 p.m., there's gonna be a tail lift party, we're gonna have dinner. And everybody who is gonna be inside the work zone, you have to have a name, you have to have a number, and you have to have a job. And if you're not there at 7 p.m., you're not allowed in the work zone for the rest of the time. And the fines are very expensive, and so we have we're going to have 3 different police officers on site, making sure people don't cross into that work zone because of the risk of those fines. It's a lot cheaper to hire police officers than it is to pay one fine.
I heard that the tree warden wants to be there and he has insurance under the town, I think.
I don't, I think we're still working through that.
Mhm.
The trees, him and I did 4. And he wanted to be part of the conversation whether or not a tree was moved or not moved. It was determined on Friday that all 3 trees have to move, and so I don't think it's appropriate to have an extra person in the work zone if we don't need it. And I think the trees should be taken down in advance and having less people in the way as possible.
Does the rest of the board feel that way?
I mean, I haven't been intimately involved, but if the building mover, the expert says they have to come down to get it there, and Tom's willing to arrange them being taken down ahead of time, so it doesn't slow the process down. I don't really.
The whole world is
Like,
gonna come.
I'm not opposed to that, as long as, you know, we're through the grant or whatever, replacing the trees and everybody's happy. It's not like I just want to go down there with a chipper, but
Well, you know, we're waiting the 2 weeks. We have a 2-week notice period. We're in the middle of that. You know, it's a rush, but I think we let the 2 weeks get over. Our road crew is removing a private tree that's outside of the right of way. And so while they're there removing that tree, there are 3 other trees. And so whether our tree warden cuts those down or our road crew cuts them down, doesn't matter, but that's the time to get the brush and the debris out of there, is when we have trucks and equipment and people to move it. That's my opinion, rather than trying to remove debris from trees that's being held up on a timeline with. There's gonna be about 20 guys, right on the Pearl Street Bridge the day of the move. They have to crib between the sidewalks, right? So there's gonna be, you have your sidewalks on either side of the bridge, there's 9 inches on one side, 10 on the other. And they're gonna fill that entire space with wood cribbing under the dollies. And so you're gonna have 20 guys just moving 75-pound blocks of wood. The last thing we want is somebody else with a chainsaw dragging brush across the street, right? Like, this is a well-oiled machine. And I think we just need to take care of anything we can take care of ahead of time, we need to take care of ahead of time.
Yeah, I think he was just concerned, like if there was trimming of trees. If they are done incorrectly, they could kill the tree and then it didn't need to be killed, like he could have gave input and recommendations like off to the side or something.
I mean,
And also the library wants to do a documentary to raise money, so
yeah,
it'd be good to have like just like a circle area where people are allowed to stand and people can come up and ask and then people can film or whatever.
yeah, we have 3 viewing areas
Okay,
along the route, and there will be publications about the estimated time for which the building will be going through those viewing areas. That are outside of those specs for, and then we also, the 3 film, there will be 3 people for filming, who will be part of that till of, the JAS sign in is what it's called. And so they're going to be allowed in and they have to meet all of the OSHA specs. We're still waiting for confirmation whether we're class 2, class 3, or we're wearing, full long sleeve reflective gear, or we're just wearing reflective vest. There's a lot of unknowns, but it's really expensive to mess up. And when things are this publicized, there will be OSHA on site, and they just look like you and I, they're not wearing a badge that says I'm here to, they just send you a fine and say, and so we just have
Well,
to,
worse than the fine, somebody gets hurt,
yes.
and almost as bad as that is the lawsuits resulting from somebody getting hurt, which would be, you think it's expensive to get the fine. Ain't nothing compared to the lawsuits for somebody getting hurt or injured.
Yeah, I mean, the plans are extensive. We're really putting a lot of effort into this. The tree warden and I did walk the route, and it was under my impression. We measured off from the face of the tree to the other side of the road where the building's going to travel. He knew which branches were in the way. The tree board was supposed to planning to prune those trees ahead of time. We're boarding up the windows so that the outside of branches can brush against the building. We've done an extensive amount of work to preserve as many trees as possible. And so we were actually going to move a telephone pole to save the apple tree in front of the building, and then now the apple tree is going, we don't have to move the pole. So it saved us, some amount of money there. So thank you. But so we really did go well out of our way to make sure every tree that could be saved is saved.
The whole world is gonna come to an end because of good trees. I got that, it's like that.
There are just 4 trees all on Grove Street.
Further
And
question?
when you say trees, too, as I understand it, at least 2 of them are,
They're ginkgos and they're not doing well.
yeah.
Monsters.
Is the bridge is the building gonna fit between the bridge rails?
No.
It's gonna go up over it?
Gonna hang out 6 feet on either side.
we have to take the lamp post down too.
Lights are coming down. All the street lights are being turned 180 degrees.
Jeez.
It was incredible to watch these guys, was it Friday?
Friday.
Yeah. Friday, walking the route and talking about what they need to do and, we got a little problem here, and heads come together and fix it and move on. It's an amazing bunch.
Yeah, and so you have VTEL, Consolidated, Comcast, Green Mountain Power, Village Water and Light, our road crew, all have things to do and move during the move. And so you have this well orchestrated machine of who's going first, securing the route and taking down stage 1, stage 2, stage 3, and estimating the amount of time for each stage so that we can hit 3:01 a.m. on Route 15 and be off by 5:59 a.m. Right? And all of them are just beautifully going together. It was awesome,
Good. Any other questions? Library move? Exciting stuff. Next up, VHB amendment for Scribner Bridge scoping study. How would the board like to handle this?
No. We had a contract with this group. It was a binding contract for X number of dollars. And it's no different than any of us having a contract with anybody. And then having them get 3/4 through the job and say, oh, by the way, you owe me $4,000. For what? The deal is a deal. As far as I'm concerned, we don't owe them a penny, and they need to give us our report that we paid for.
I tend to agree with Mike. The only question I have is how much of this was LCPC doing under contract with project management with them? Anything or?
This whole project was very loose. You know, we had a first kickoff meeting at LCPC. And then they came with a draft. Remember that was almost a year ago now. I think it was like June or July when they brought the 4 or the 3 options to us. And then it just kind of sat vacant for a little while, and then they said, hey, we need to close it up, and they sent me a bill for 4,000. And I've tried calling LCPC 3 different times, but I don't think they want to give an opinion on it, to be honest. I don't think we should put them in that corner.
Well, the reason I asked the question was, Mike is absolutely right. We had a contract for a product. Their contention is we asked them to investigate another alternative, which was part of the original plan way back when.
10 years ago.
At no point during that meeting did any of the engineers say, oh, we can do that, but it's going to cost you $4,000 more.
That's where I agree with you.
There was no-
Is this should have came before the work.
It should absolutely should have come
Yes.
before the work and given us the authorization to say, yeah, you go ahead, we'll spend $4,000 more, or you gotta be out of your friggin' mind.
The other point that's worth making is most of this study had already been done.
Are you guys?
Yeah,
And so it's not like they were redoing something. It wasn't like there was this brand new vague idea they had to come up with. It was like.
it was all done.
It was a cookie cutter, the
Can-
original
can-
one.
Not, I've been a proponent for moving on. I just don't know if Peter's familiar and Adrian being new board members. This is a scoping study for potential changes to Scrivener Bridge that we need to have done so that we can get grant money. Here's the kicker. 15 years ago, the scoping study was done and no new results are coming out of it, but we can't use a 15-year-old scoping study for grants, so we're paying for a re-scoping study of what we already had.
Right.
I think that's the grind a
Did it?
little bit.
And we're spending over $70,000, and we probably could have fixed it ourselves for $70,000.
And I want to go for a grant for a scoping study to see how much money we've spent on scoping studies. I say, I'm with Duncan. I talked with him earlier about this because at no point do I ever remember the conversation of it'll cost more. If they want to do their original contract and leave off the alternative that they're adding $4,000 for, sure. Whatever, but I think they need to release it.
So just release the alternative, release the addition and send a final report.
Send the final report, and if they say, if they want to hold back the alternate at the end that they're charging us $4,000 for, I'm fine with them holding that back.
I'd like to get what we asked for. We asked them to do that and nobody said anything at that meeting. It's gonna cost you more money to do that. Had they said that, and I talked with Mark earlier, and Mark was the negotiator with them, with LCPC, attended those meetings. Mark said the same thing. He's no longer on the board, but he said, if any of them that night had said it's gonna cost you more money for us to investigate this alternative that was already investigated, that we want you to investigate again.
I mean, and remember we talked about possibly lifting the bridge up and moving it somewhere else, so like, you know, granted.
That was another alternative in the original
You
study.
did, but you guys directed me to say, Tom, look into it, as long as it doesn't cost any money. And as soon as they said it's gonna cost more money, I said, all right, don't do it. But like they said, at that time, they said it was gonna cost more money, but at this time, you know, but maybe, I don't know, I agree with you.
I want the whole study for the same price.
I do too, right? I
How
think we're owed it.
did the two of you feel?
Yeah, I think we should try to like fight it a bit.
Adrian wants to push.
Who do you want to be?
Push.
Peter wants to push. I guess I'm outvoted here. I was trying to meet in the middle. Do you need more clarity on that, Tom?
I'm
It's a
gonna try to
little
get it for
loose, but
free, and then if I come back.
it's on them because they never came back to.
What's your negotiating? I want to know your low point. They're willing to give it to.
No, we're not gonna pay a minute.
But it sounds of it, the board's willing to honor the contracted value.
I think the big point is if they had come to us before they had done the work and said, we want an amendment to the contract, and it's gonna cost you $4,000 to get that, I would have said, screw you. Honestly, and I don't know what the rest of the board would have done, but I wouldn't have paid the extra money for it.
Hoping
So,
they would have been tactful.
To come back to us after they've already done the work and say, we want to be reimbursed for something we didn't tell you what it was gonna cost you. After the fact, to me, that doesn't work. You know, if you want to change the amendment or the contract, put it out there out front. And we would authorize the payment, and we didn't authorize them. We didn't authorize that increased cost.
Yeah.
We good with that?
You're good.
I don't believe there's any updates on the industrial park. Next up was an addition from Adrian and Tom, right? Trying to get there. Project management and tracking, you wanna?
What'd you say about industrial park?
No big updates that I know of,
No updates.
none that I know of.
Okay.
Yes, so we were talking about doing a project management application, for software. That will help us keep track of all the projects we have going on, like the library, the bridge, everything. So that board members can just go on and see like a dashboard and see like the different projects and see like, this one's on hold because LCPC hasn't gotten back to us. This one is going forward and we need to do something with that 250. Which just like gives us better communication to see all of our projects at once and not have to go into our emails and like dig and find things and just kind of puts it all at once. And it kind of gives Tom a place where he can like make updates on projects and send out notifications to us and kind of put like call out bigger problems and for us to just kind of see where things are. And it's gonna, I think it would help us with not letting like smaller projects go to the wayside. Like you can kind of like set up a reminder and to yourself to like bring it back. Or like, I don't know, I think it'd be really helpful. So I put together a bunch of different options.
I think it would really help with, it's been this long-standing like phone versus email. And like, I like the phone because I drive for an hour, so I call everybody, but then you guys, there are people on the board that like emails, but that takes time. So at the end of the day, I don't like to do that. This is kind of in real time. I can kind of hit that hybrid of, and then maybe if somebody says, hey, give me I need more than what you know, tell me what's going on. Then I can like, it's kind of like, it gives everybody the best of what they need.
Yeah.
And it keeps me organized because.
Would this be similar to Ron Rogensky's spreadsheet where he was tracking projects?
But more digital, so you'll see like real-time notes, so like every time, like I call them products, so every time I work on a product, I'll spend like 20-30 minutes on it. And so today I did like the transportation plan, emergency management plan, transportation plan's done, ready for state review, and I would put complete, ready for state review, and maybe there'd be a link so you guys could actually see it too. And then I'll say emergency management plan in draft form, need, estimated 2 more hours with a link. So then you can actually see what I'm actually working on. You can see how far I've gotten and you can see the changes between the two. So, but you can do it at 8 o'clock at night. You're not waiting on my email anymore. Now you're doing it when it works for you guys. Like that's the part I love. It's like, you're not waiting for me to update you. You're updating yourself.
And I think it also could help with like assigning to different municipal workers. So maybe this project has Tom and Randall working on it together, so there's like clear distinction on like who's the point person of the project. Or maybe it's just Randall or whoever.
Yeah, and you probably never saw Ron's spreadsheet, but he had those kinds of things. And so it sounds like this
They
is.
have it on their website.
Yes, they do.
Yeah.
They maintain it on the website.
There's two different ones.
There
There's
was.
like a grants tracking one.
There was grants tracking on a project.
And then
maybe
a project or something.
Yeah.
And I think they like for a while, kind of just at the beginning of the meeting, you know, the TA, Ron, oh, this project is here, here's the note. It just take like 5 minutes and
What's your recommendation, Adrian?
So my recommendation is the smartsuite.com one. The other ones were Civic Plus, which is a government focused one, but I heard it's really expensive. You have to make a request to get a quote. So I didn't think I'd have time to do that before this meeting. So I just kind of passed over it. But the other ones was Monday.com, Asana.com, Microsoft Planner, which is free and comes with Outlook. But overall, my recommendation is SmartSuite for its simplicity for people at different skill levels with technology and for its capabilities and its price.
That was 125.
120 a year.
120.
And I'm assuming tax as well. Well, I guess we don't have to.
And
We don't
unlimited.
pay tax. Come on.
I always forget about it.
I make a motion, we go with Smart Suite for 120 a year.
Second.
Motion
Oh,
a
you
second. Further discussion? I don't see an issue with Microsoft Planner, but looks like we're gonna call the vote unless there's any more discussion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye,
All those opposed? The ayes have it.
thank you.
That's
I would
great.
like to make a request that, that I don't want to see something like this take the place of your reports where you fill us in on
Yes.
projects that are going on.
Uh-huh.
Maybe you can use it as an adjunct
Well, I
to
think-
reports.
I'm more thinking about it for me and like these last, so normally I kind of give you guys, every couple of days I tell you stuff that's going on, right? But lately, it hasn't been that often. I've just been, you know, I can't tell you how many hours a day I'm working.
And honestly, that's not, at least to me, that's not all that helpful. I would rather see it in a more condensed format.
And
This
so,
will definitely do that.
yeah, and so for me,
Yeah.
it's like, I get, you know, and then what I did on Monday, I don't remember by the time I come to Friday. So what I'm really excited about this is it's gonna it's gonna give me the whole week, and I'll probably send you like when I submit the final thing, I'll say, hey, this is done, you know, this week we did it, these are the final things. And you're still gonna have your bi-weekly PA report, but I think instead of having, I think now you're gonna get daily up-to-dates by just logging in yourself. You're gonna get project completion updates like, hey, you know, this is the permit that came back, permit went out, or this happened, or that happened. But a lot of the, you know, my weakness is always like putting my work into paragraph form. I think that everyone knows that. And I think this kind of will take the place of that. And then if you need elaboration, I can give it too, but I think it also is gonna help me move forward, you know?
Yeah, and I guess Tom and I could work together maybe to, well, Rosemary would buy it, but like we would like kind of like learn how to use it together.
Yeah.
And then kind of give a quick tutorial to everyone else on how to use it.
Yeah.
There's also an app so you can like use it on your phone.
Yeah, and again, if it can be used as a tool to help us keep things on the table that need to be kept on the table, I think that's great.
Yeah.
I think we need that,
Mhm.
so.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea. I just want to make sure that it is used. Like, I almost think the first task is putting a 6-month reminder because I don't like governments paying for stuff, you know, if it drops off in 6 months and it's not being used by the employees, why pay for it?
Mhm.
So I want some sort of like metric for productivity of it or.
You can do that. You can see how much people use it. Yeah.
Yeah, but use it and like log into it and use it are different things, I guess.
Mm.
Just be mindful, you know,
Yeah.
it's
I think
cheap.
$120 gonna kill us.
It's not, but it's when you buy 30 different licenses and continue paying them
Nobody's
because you
buying
don't know
30
about.
different licenses. We're just
I'm,
buying-
I'm, I'm saying I don't want to get into the mentality of never ending.
We're not gonna.
Mhm.
All right, committee access for remote meetings.
So. I put together a kind of price breakdown of how we could make some improvements for conference meeting upgrades. The reason for this is to make remote meetings more accessible to residents and to committee members. And to help boards follow the new like part of open meeting law where you have to record meetings. So for like the Development Review Board, the Board of Civil Authority, the Board of Abatement, and the library trustees that are non-advisory. And I also think this would help by keeping our equipment safer. I come into meetings a number of times and I see like the owl like on the ground and like things like strewn about. So if we just had like a more permanent system somewhere and a laptop that's just like in one spot and again with every skill level, they can like go up and log into Zoom and do a recording and or a conference call with other people that aren't able to attend in person. So I think these improvements could help that and us like set up a stationary area. So it's a laptop, TV, a ceiling mount for projector if we don't want to get the TV, computer speakers. And this is kind of like to the side, but I was looking into a way to directly upload a Zoom meeting to a YouTube channel. And I was just thinking, could this replace GMA access? But then I was thinking about town meeting day, so maybe that wouldn't be a good idea. So just throwing that out there. And that plugin is free. So the cost for a laptop, TV, and speakers is $376.
What are you gonna use, like $150 Chromebook or something like that?
That's what I was gonna
Yeah.
ask.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Lenovo Chromebook 3, 14-inch, $168. She has it all right there.
Oh,
Mhm.
I didn't see that.
And you can actually get that unit for $168.
Yeah.
You're not gonna game with it.
No.
Yeah.
It's pretty limited, but I don't know if it really needs to be that heavy resource.
Hmm.
Oh, yeah, here it is.
I don't think we can do a ceiling mounted projector, but
Mhm.
So would the 43-inch HD like take the place of this concept? Or
Yeah.
I actually really like that because I can see it.
We were talking earlier today about the idea of using a combination of the save. Like right now, this is for Zoom, right? But what if we wanted to break into the budget and, and so now here we are, we're,
Having two screens.
so that way you can see my computer on this and then the Zoom is now uninterrupted, right?
So that what you're showing there would be on the
on the
HD TV.
Yeah. Like how fun would that be? So that way the people on Zoom are able to watch what's also on the projector because it's like on the camera. Yeah, so like everybody's like interactive together.
Yeah.
But you can do that with share on Zoom, can't you? Share the page.
I mean, some people can.
Can we share the projector with the village or like?
I believe it's
That belongs to the village, doesn't it?
Rosemary says it's fine by. No longer here.
isn't the projector like jointly owned or something?
Well, maybe it is.
Wow.
Yeah, maybe it is.
Yeah,
I know when the Historical Society bought it, we had to get permission from trustees to borrow it.
I think this is below our procurement policy, so I don't even know if we need a motion other
Yeah.
than I won't pay tax.
You 64 gig big enough, you figured?
Huh?
64 gig big enough for you, 128.
I think it's fine because the recordings will just go up on YouTube and we can like delete it right after.
I think we should do that. If we did a direct stream to YouTube, it would solve the share. Right now we have shared stuff with GMATV, but if we had GMATV still stream our stuff and we had a direct link to, then we'd have that duplication.
Yeah.
It's like they crashed tonight, so I have to send in the recording.
Mm,
This way we can kind of prevent that.
yeah.
I was really,
Do we pay like the fee to GMA?
the state pays it.
Oh, okay.
It's like a legislatively funded.
Public broadcast.
And we talked about reaching out to them to see if we get an extra set of microphones, so.
Initially, he said no.
Oh.
I could. You could push. Yeah.
So,
Well, as Evan points out, I don't think we even really need a motion on it.
the one big one is like, if you're going with a wall mount TV and we're mounting it to the wall, we need to talk to the other owners of this building. I doubt they'd have a problem, but we can't just go doing it.
I think the other issue is we're gonna move where we meet. Like, there's the wall, the only wall is probably over there, right?
Yeah.
Or behind Duncan, you know, so something, the room's gonna rearrange some.
Maybe it needs to be on a stand or something.
Yeah,
We can look into the prices of those. Mhm.
The hard thing is, the audience, right? If we're staring at the wall, the audience would be where?
yeah,
Yeah, we
Or
have-
we'd be
We
looking.
can hire an interior designer.
yeah.
Just kidding.
I'm not adverse to it.
Great idea.
I think we're good with that. Municipal employee roles and responsibilities.
So also in the packet, I created a diagram of the hierarchy of like who kind of goes to who above them. So select board at the top, and then below that, community and economic developer, the road foreman, the town administrator, and then the town clerk and treasurer. And then below that, other employees. Sorry, the text is kind of small on this. But
You had to get my magnifying glass.
But the intention of this is kind of a survey just to give to all municipal employees to see if this hierarchy chart matches what they think it is. And to
Like,
ask them what their daily tasks
I
are.
don't remember, I got a long time ago. Do you need it or?
Ask them what their daily tasks are. Are there any responsibilities that they feel are outside of the role they do? Are there any tasks that you believe could be streamlined or improved? Do you feel that you have the necessary resources and support to perform your duties effectively? Are there any tasks or duties you'd like to take on in the future to grow in your role? Are there any duties or tasks that you think should be reassigned to other roles or departments? And then just other comments. So just kind of getting a feel for where all employees are, like in the current system, and seeing if there is room for improvements.
How's the board feel about that? Slash's hierarchy, correct? I talked with Adrian about it, but I think she got it. I think you're spot on, but
So this would ultimately be circulated to all municipal employees, and in theory, they would fill it out and return it to somebody.
wonderfully. And it won't get lost. And everybody will fill it out.
Okay.
And they'll all take it seriously.
Yeah, and then we would review it.
You won't get
and
your
see-
Sounds
paycheck.
like the military. You will do it.
You won't get your paycheck unless you fill this out.
Yeah, we'll give them paychecks when they return the form, right?
Sure. At high level, is the board buying the concept of employees filling out these evaluations and getting back to us?
Sure.
Mike?
Yeah, whatever you said.
I don't think we need.
Second.
I think we're good.
I
Do you
think
want
we're
a
good.
motion for this? I don't really think it's needed. It's just a survey.
I'm just thinking about something.
Casey had something on 21 and 23 or something, so
Yeah.
I'm going from memory here. What you got?
Is, I know this is a draft, but, and I hadn't actually seen it until tonight because I had only read Tom's paragraph.
Yeah.
But I mean, at a glance, I can see that. I see the skate park, but I don't see the other committees, and I don't see, well, it relates to work too, which is a whole different discussion. the amount and volume of work for the different committees.
Mhm.
But they ought to be on the chart too.
The reason,
That's all.
the reason the skate park made it on here, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, we were talking and we were talking about town employees, and I said, well, there's the outlier. The skate park has an employee, they pay $800 a week or something. And Adrian goes, well, what do they report to? And I said, I don't know. I think Casey. So the reason you're on there.
The chair of your committee.
Well, the bill of, if you're talking about, no. We've had town employees, they're hired and, but that's approved by you guys at some point. But those, if there's a town employee, then that's just part of the salary system. If we contract with an individual or a company like Portalet people, whatever, all that stuff, all those services, the bills come to me that go to Rosemary.
So it's not an employee.
It's not an employee, that's right, it's not an employee.
I remember this oddly coming to the board
And
for,
they-
and if
so
it's,
Right, so. Yeah, there isn't, perhaps if other committees don't have employees, but they certainly use public services department. So that's where it gets mushy in my head,
Public Works does a lot of work for committees, yes.
yeah.
So are you telling me that the person that works for the skate park is not a town employee, not,
Correct, the person who was an employee has stopped doing the job,
and you're not gonna hire another employee, you're gonna contract?
correct?
Okay.
We are, at the moment, we are using a contracted person.
So for the context of this,
Yeah,
could,
right, then that's the.
could we
correct-
scrub those two? But then I think there's almost a different one for committees to fill out.
Something that's to do with the scope of work, and that's a whole different area of exploration. As I said, I only just barely saw this chart, because all I had seen was the text.
This is just being broached to the select board, and I think your point is really valid, right? Because we have this plan, the next item is restructuring committees and it's like.
Yeah.
All of this is changing all at once, right? And I
Yeah.
think as this evaluation comes through with town employees, it's probably gonna be very different than what you drafted, right? Like something,
Right,
yeah.
right, but that's why I wanted to be able to say it later and stuff like.
Do you have any plans to hire like employees?
If we did, basically, the employee has always been essentially a maintenance person who is also usually a skateboarder and also has a role model, a quite important actually role model on work that they perform as part of the job, because they model taking care of the park. That was the employee. When that person no longer could do the job, it was most essential that maintenance get covered. And so we have contract, that's why it's a contracted
Yeah.
bit of work now.
So if you have to, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead with this.
I was gonna say, if you had to like fire the employee. with the
No,
select- oh,
No, people move on. And this guy did.
No, I'm just saying like in the future, if you did have an employee, like, and you had to fire them, then would the select
Oh,
board
that
fire
would be-
them, or would
Yeah, that
like
would be,
this committee fire them?
but we wouldn't. We've never had any. It's the question never has crossed our experience.
Mm-hmm.
It's been replacement. It's so that kind of that work has always been done. In fact, it started off with an AmeriCorps person,
Mm-hmm.
blah blah, and became an employee.
Yeah, so I can remove that,
Yeah.
okay,
Mhm.
cool. Thanks for pointing that out. you have a question, Peter?
It might not be possible to answer, but, you know, I like the chart. I think it's really clear. Is there a way to represent the fact that these 4 diamonds all need to relate to each other? You know, it
Like what their connection is between each other?
yeah,
That might be something like after they fill out and like, because I don't know, I don't think we know that yet.
right.
The only known,
It's an unformed thought, but it's you know, sometimes we get into this box where we might say, you know, I don't work for you, I work for the select board. Well, but we're not talking about, you know, you working for me. We're talking about needing to work together. So I have no idea how to diagram that.
Illustrate that.
Yeah, but
A squiggly line.
a squiggly line. Yeah.
Clouds.
Okay.
A line that is vibrating in sympathetic resonance.
Yeah.
I think we're good.
tuning fork.
I think we're good with sending out and hitting. I don't know who distributes it, but probably.
How would you want to distribute them or?
I think I can.
Okay.
I think I'll probably copy all of you on that email for moral support.
Yeah, for sure.
I'll fix the chart a bit more and then send you a new. Yeah.
I'm more excited about the latter questions about support. I think it's gonna change our view of where people are versus where we want them to be. It's totally different. I'm really excited about it.
Next up is restructuring committees. Really surprised there's not more people here. We're gonna go down to one committee.
I can multitask.
One big, beautiful committee.
It'll be the library trustees. No, conservation commission is such stories.
Bounces right back to Adrian's whole crusade to knock down silos. So that's part of it, and then the other part is incorporating the reality that we all talked about last time about too much work, nobody knows what, you know, all the different demands are, etc.
Yeah,
It's all been talked about, but not in a cohesive way.
well,
So,
maybe I should give
okay.
some background for people that want to hear me talk about this again. So I think that we could really evaluate how our committees function at the moment. And by doing that, opening a conversation on how we would like them to serve us better in the future. So my solution for doing that would be to have a meeting where all of the committee, commission, and Reimagine Johnson chairs meet up, and we do a working session where we just look at all the tasks that are under the committees and just look at those solely and then put them into new buckets and then make new committees from that to see if and you know, have conversations along the way and really work on it together. And then give that as a recommendation for the select board to move forward with if they so choose. So, and the reason for this is because we have Reimagine Johnson task forces that aren't committees and are really wanting to go after grants and are getting donations and funding. And right now, the select board has mentioned that it's not a great idea for them to be funneling money into the town without being a committee. So there's that reason. And also just to revitalize our committees, like we have the recreation committee that is inactive right now, but we have the Reimagine Johnson Recreation Task Force that is very active right now. So just looking at the big picture and seeing how we can restructure them together. And taking into account if like committees are doing some like labor intensive tasks that maybe could be rolled off to an employee, or thinking about how we're gonna have a bunch of green spaces soon, that they're gonna need maintenance, and just kind of like seeing how things are gonna change in the future and how we can move with the future. So that aspect of the meeting would be great. And then another part of the meeting would be for the chairs to come with a list of projects that are kind of like flood resiliency projects, or it could be other projects, but we look at those lists of projects and we prioritize that list together. And we give that to the select board, and we give it to Randall to work on getting shovel ready projects and for those top priority projects, and going after funding for those. So I think that's all.
That was a lot. I mean, I talked with Shane Spence when he was on the board. Johnson has too many committees. I think they could be restructured into be a lot less. And as Casey has mentioned a couple meetings in a row now, committees need to always grow. And I think you asked Rosemary like how long we could support it. She said as long as the taxpayers do, but at some point they're not going to. That's on the money side of it, not necessarily the structure side, but you know, the example, and I've talked with you about this a little bit. The example that Shane and I used to talk about was we have a skate park, we have a rec committee, we have an arboretum, we have a beautification committee, right? I think there's another one that fits in. Most
Rail trail.
rail trail, okay, sure. Most towns have a parks and rec committee. That's one. And then you could have subcommittees very similar to what the Historic Society does. And I could be wrong, but I think if subcommittees are made up of not the majority of the board, they don't have to follow the meeting law. They just have to present at, you know, the monthly meeting. So maybe I'm wrong about that, but I'm trying to make life easier.
No, you're right, we do that in the law department. So you have task force or working groups.
You know, if there was a Parks and Rec committee. I'm throwing numbers out there, please don't get offended. Let's say that there's a 9-member committee, but 3 members are very passionate about skate park, that's what they're interested in. For you guys to meet and come up with your plans and all that, you don't really need to follow the meeting law as long as you're presenting your plan at the monthly meeting. And it's all being recorded and
Or quarterly, or.
or quarterly. So like when the Historic Society meets, their larger group, they get a report from the Buildings and Grounds Committee, the Financial Committee, they have their own subcommittees, right? I'm asking you two, you're both more intimate with the Historic Society than I am.
Yeah, I think it's a fairly informal process for reporting back to at least in the historical. But technically, there's what, 4 different subcommittees?
And however many there is, I'm just saying. How many committees?
They're task oriented.
Tom and I will email and, you know, I'll say, oh, get a hold of X, 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 and X. And he goes, well, how about Y and Z? Oh, crap, you're right, you know, forgot.
You know, we have this problem, you know, where I used to work, and I think it's a problem around the state. And one way we got around it a different way, which I don't think is the right way. I think the way that's presented about subcommittees is a little more formal and better tracking. It's like there was committees that were unofficial committees, but then they were sponsored by the select board. And so the understanding from the attorney was that the only actions of committees that are binding is spending money. And so they would use the warrants at select board meetings of that subcommittee to justify the actions of the subcommittee. So it was transparent and met all the deals that were involved. But it made the committees, without the process of open meeting laws, committees are more organic and more fun and can happen. And you know, you look at this Reimagine Johnson thing and it's exploding and it's gaining ground, and it's like it's kind of that organic nature to it makes it more viable. how do you bring that organic nature to town government? And it's like, there's no good answer. But I think this idea of subcommittee is pretty cool, and it's a way that you can kind of do the fun and then also follow open meeting.
But I think the only way for this to work is for the committees to buy in. Correct.
Well, my question, I'm confused from what we were saying earlier, Evan, is you were saying recreation committee or recreation Parks and Rec department? Because it's real clear that committees need so much municipal support that really it, you know, in the future, but we're far from there now. It would be a department that would perform
Which would
the work.
just pretty much. Not necessarily, but it could just shave all the committees. I was saying Parks and Recs committee.
Mhm.
Or that was my intention, if I had misspoken. Obviously, every committee is started by a passion, right?
Mhm.
And then it grows into larger and larger and larger. And then it, in my experience, it ends with coming back to the town and saying, we need an employee,
Right.
right? And an employee, our average employee cost
Or
is
support.
after benefits, what, $45 an hour? So a full-time employee is between $90,000 and $100,000 a year, and that's what the committees are coming for. Well, we need an employee. We need an employee. I've said numerous meetings that I want long-term plans for committees. That's, I haven't really ever seen one. But I'm the plan guy, right? I want the skate park to say, and you do a lot really good work, Casey. You bring in a pile of money for that place. I'd like to say, I'd like to see skate park is this big, and 10 years from now we want to add a half pipe here, and 15 years after that we want a bike track here, and we want this, and 20 years from now we're going to be planning on needing an employee to do this, or we're going to be planning on we're going to need the select board to increase the rec coordinators hours by 8 hours a week or something,
Right.
instead of this grind of, well, we need an employee. You're not the only committee that's asking for it.
Right.
But I deal with the numbers. I don't know if we can afford it.
Yeah. Oh. Not with the way we're currently set up and with the current budget and such that we have, but. And I don't mean to monopolize this at all. So, you know, cut this off whenever you want to, but, or need to. But. From the get-go, committees start using and always have used soft supports. Photocopying, accounting, treasury service, etc. And then it changes a bit to really, you know, the state park actually sort of has had an unpaid employee, part-time employee.
And you.
Me. And other, you know, people that can say the same thing, right? We're in the middle of some really particular crossroad crunches right now that Tom knows all too well, and I worry equally about the load on him, particularly at this time. So my mind and heart really are caught between immediate situations and the need for measured long-term planning, which I'm all for. But I also see that we're in a crunch time right now, which is a separate problem.
Well, the good thing about this is like, I don't want us to make the decision, the select board, like, I don't want us to make. We're gonna only have this committee, we're gonna only have that committee. I want us to like work together.
Yeah.
And like solve it together. Yeah. So I don't think anything will like change with like the skate park and what you have currently going on. If anything, I think like rolling into something else will help and maybe save money. Like everywhere needs benches, everywhere needs these kind of things. If we can like look at holistically where we need all those things and like buy in bulk or like, you know.
And
Things like
it's,
that.
I mean, for a couple of years, we talked about growing the municipal coordinator, or excuse me, the recreation coordinator position. And that, to me, that's really clear, a really clear answer.
The skate park has talked about that. previously. We haven't really broached that. The select board, meeting, like with the select board, budgeting wise, that's what I'm saying. No,
I think it's safe to say that if money were no issue, we'd have directors for everything, you know,
Yeah, if money,
every committee.
if money
It's-
were-
It really comes down to the question of
Well, recreation.
what people are willing to pay for.
See, it comes back to recreation being what we're all saying, recreation is a larger conglomerate than skate park.
Mhm.
Parks and Rec, I think Tuesday Night Live and the Red Oven can fall under too. So
Yeah, there's all kinds of, I mean, we're
And
committee
And
rich,
I'm agreeing.
committee. poor.
we're very committee rich, and I think for our size town, population in Grand List, we're fortunate to have a rec coordinator. You drive 10 minutes that way and they do everything for free.
And then even after this, like, I just want better communication with all the committees, because I know in the past, we've like gone after the same grants as each other and like, just like didn't even know what the other ones are doing, and so setting up a system where we can like meet once a year as all committees, or, you know, like, just some systems.
So I'm gonna turn into a pumpkin pretty quick here. I've had some health issues that I can't be here until 11 o'clock. And we've got some other things to deal with. Is there something we can do to move this discussion on and
Yes.
get it going?
I just wanted the board approval for myself, Tom, Randall, and Peter, or some other, it's like, I asked him ahead of time and he said yes, to organize and hold this working session.
More power to you.
Yeah.
Go for it.
Sure.
Can I reach out to VLCT and just ask the broad question and just state the problem and see what approved, if there's any known solutions?
Sure.
Yeah.
I don't know what the problem is. We have too many volunteers sometimes, none other times.
Well, it's certainly reasonable to think about taking a hard look at the committees that we've got and reestablishing. I think some of the committees we've got probably don't even know what their goals are. What their roles or responsibilities are. So just having that discussion about what really is the purpose of.
I think they might know what those are, but they haven't had the platform to express those, like, to each other.
Yeah, right, and a platform where we all could talk with each other, that's highly needed.
Mhm.
Sounds good. Next up. Communication and relaying information. New board, how would the board like to receive information? What works best for us? What works best for Tom? What works best for everyone?
I think we touched on that a little earlier. I think, can we try this new software? And then if it doesn't work. Maybe come back to it. But I think it's gonna hit that, I'm hoping it's gonna hit the hybrid. Where then I can update in real time easily. Get everybody, I think that's my goal, if it doesn't work, it doesn't work.
Hopefully there's a report that can go out of it. I mean, we're all busy and I get that we're busy and it's efficient. I don't want it to take the place of reports, I guess.
With reports, what do you mean? I haven't seen a report yet.
I don't want to log on another software to track down what this employee and that employee is doing.
No, I meant,
It's nice just,
you said like it shouldn't replace the reports that's already happening.
we're getting reports here, but like Tom said, we used to get weekly reports, even bullet items, I don't really care.
Yeah.
Or we talked in depth as a previous board about Hyde Park setup.
Yeah, and I think,
There
I
was-
think we have talked a lot in the past about getting more detail, and actually this might enable you to provide more detail in your, I agree with that. I don't want it to take the place of your administrator's report.
No, this is.
I think it's an adjunct or an enhancement, possibly.
This is I think this will replace to the general public a facilitation of the meeting. But the other part will be the detail that you guys need for the decisions, and hopefully. There is a way that I can print that off as part of, because I don't want to use it just for grants, I want to use it for like every task. Right,
Old business stuff, you know,
Exactly.
stuff that has been falling off
and
our
if I
table.
can print it out, and then for every, at least at the select board meetings, but if not weekly, that's my end of the week, Friday before I go home, I print it, send it. And then you guys will then say, oh, I do want to log in and see that, or maybe I don't, who knows, but that's my goal, is if it can, because it takes me a while to write the paragraphs, like that's my weak point. All my emails are always in bullets, if you think about it, right? And so what it's doing is it's taking my weak point and strengthening it, and I really like that idea a lot.
Is this software, I'll call it that, because that's what I think it is. Is this system something that if it worked within her select board and employees, it could work with all board chairs?
We could certainly have that conversation.
It's unlimited users, so.
Yeah, I would love for like projects that we work directly on, it would be great, like again, I was finding time to like just touch base, like this would solve all those problems, right? Like, I'm kind of seeing this as like all in one solution.
Maybe, yeah.
Yeah.
I had to understand it first.
Yeah.
I'll help you install it.
But yeah, I mean,
All right.
this does seem to relate to that as potential
Mhm.
Yeah.
help. But in the meantime, well, this is not board employee, this is board employee, particularly Tom, for Tom and I. When you first started the job, this is a small, just a piece of it, is that the office staff had a schedule or something and could say, when you would be in, so I could know that. Right, but that's ended. So I never know what's going on.
I am much more active than the previous administrator.
Yeah,
And
well.
so I have meetings almost all day. Now I'm to the, I used to do daily morning reports to them to say which time my meetings were, and I would send it to the office staff. The last 2 or 3 weeks, I haven't done that. Just with all the, I started at 6:30, last night I was up till 3 AM typing.
I know, that
Like,
worries me.
I'm doing the best I can, and I think that we need to find that system, and we're gonna get there, but we have to get through some projects before we point out the problems. It's like, let's get through this busy period and then take a deep breath and reevaluate.
All right. Peter, School Street traffic.
Okay.
You requested this. Hopefully we can make it.
What's that?
Hopefully we can make it quick.
Quick. I have a 45-minute presentation plan.
What you got?
Okay, so we have a very busy street, and it's only gonna get busier. Got the school, we got the library coming, we have Tuesday Night Live, pizza, and 50 apartments moving into McClellan perhaps, or something like that.
20.
Increasing traffic. And the traffic moves way too fast. You all have heard me talk about this before. There are a few things we can do that are quick and easy. I guess maybe I'll just go back to earlier today. I was in touch with the VLCT because the last time I brought this up, there was the possibility that insurance had a problem with speed bumps. They've not heard of our insurance carrier having a problem with speed bumps, but speed bumps will be the most effective way to slow down traffic. They're also very unpopular, especially with plow drivers. We'll take a look at that later. But right now, we can make a formal request of the sheriff's department to have a speed cart on School Street for 2 weeks. And just as a start, to try and get things to slow down. There are 2 of them with the sheriff's department. They're trying to get a third so that each town that they cover will have their own to move around as they wish in the town. But right now, there's just 2 for the 3 towns. We can just make a formal request to have that. They usually move it around, like I said, in 2-week periods. Probably be a good idea to ask for it to come after the library moves. We don't need another thing on School Street.
Does anybody have issue with Peter making a formal request to the sheriff's department?
Not at all.
I have one comment though.
Yeah.
The speed limit, and I talked to Tom about this, the speed ordinance
Yes,
is a village ordinance.
and the town ordinance.
It's not a town ordinance.
We, it's in the town ordinances at 25 miles per hour and in the village ordinances as 20.
Where is it in the town ordinances?
Well, Eric didn't give me the page number.
Don't
but
we
I
set
was-
the speed limits for highways?
The village has the ability to set, they have the ability to adopt ordinances as per their charter, and their ordinance says 20 miles an hour
And that's
on
not
School
legal.
Street.
The state will not accept a speed limit less than 25.
That's what I was told by, I had talked about trying to get, there's a grant that they have annually.
Yeah.
I thought school zones, you could set a lesser
They said,
speed limit if it's a designated school zone.
well, and this was, maybe there's more to know, but they had said that they could not, the lowest they could reduce to was 25. They can't reduce any lower since it's already at 25. Because I was gonna get the grant, remember we talked about flashing lights there, we were gonna have a collaborative effort with the school. I met with Staff Sergeant Watson, he looked into it, and those lights would flash to say the speed limit is already 25, right? So there's really, yeah, it's more of like, it wouldn't provide any jurisdiction for them to make any action. Because it's already 25, any additional action, I should say, whereas if you're changing the speed limit, they can do something more, but. That could, this could be just his interpretation, there might be something different,
I know there's a specific statute with regard to designated school zones. And I thought they could go down as low as 20 in a designated school zone.
The speed limit in school zones in Vermont is typically 20 miles per hour. However, there may be variations depending on specific location and school district. The local governing body can establish effective and enforceable speed limit on town highways ranging from 25 to 30 miles per hour. That's real clear, isn't it?
Absolutely. Totally
Not
clear.
not getting heavily in depth to the weeds. Peter was asking if he could make a formal request. I haven't heard an objection.
I don't object. My only comment is that in order for them to honor that request, the proper speed limit signs are going to need to be posted on School Street.
And they are. There's a speed limit sign when you turn off Pearl Street, and another one after you've come in from the covered bridge.
But those are 25.
25, and that is, according to the town ordinance, the speed limit on School Street. That's what Marla she must be watching. Just handed me, was the town ordinance and the village ordinance.
The village is 20.
I thought we said.
Yeah, so the village is 20. But the state will not allow a 20 mile per hour speed limit unless it's a designated school zone or whatever, but in terms of the current ordinances, the only ordinance that's in compliance is the towns at 25. Those signs are posted. It needs to be clear in the ordinance, or when the sheriff issues a ticket and it and the person shows up in court, if it's not in the ordinance, it gets tossed out.
Yeah,
So
but
there's
they
no
won't,
enforceability.
they won't show up to court anyways if anybody contests it.
Yeah.
It doesn't really
The
matter.
sheriff's department. will.
No, they won't. It'd be bad public relations. I don't know why we're worried about it. The ticket will be thrown out either way.
So writing a ticket essentially is meaningless.
Right.
Unless somebody voluntarily. pays.
Essentially,
Most
yeah,
likely,
essentially
yes.
meaningless.
Most likely it'll be a warning. or two.
So. The speed card. Will tell people when they're going faster than 25 miles per hour.
I'll see if I can set a record.
Okay,
Before we
and you know, I would say there was a truck that went by the other day at about 60. So you know, we have a little bit of room to work there. The other thing is that we have the sheriff's department, I believe it was, provided the town with 2 digital speed signs. There's one coming from the west just before the Main Street Bridge. That one works. There's one coming down the hill from Morrisville direction. That one is not working. Sergeant Watson said they're meant not to be permanent. They're meant to be able to be moved around. So perhaps we could take one of those. Well, first of all, I don't know if it's Public Works, but we should find out why that one.
We had it repaired once, local electric.
Yep.
So I think actually Jason and I. Probably 2 months ago, I should remind him. As soon as Public Works has to take it down, bring it to their shop, and 802 Electric will come either take it to their shop or they'll work on it in the town garage. But they can't work on it in location, is the problem.
Okay.
But it's, if we want, we can put it anywhere we want, and it just attaches to a standard post space.
Right.
Do those collect data?
No.
So are you requesting that gets moved to School Street at some point?
Yeah, once the speed cart comes and goes, you know, we do have the option to have something a little more permanent on School Street. If we can get one of those moved, would be great.
You tell me where to put it, I'll put it done right now.
Okay. The bigger issue is that all of this is only mildly effective. It basically keeps honest people honest. The sheriff's office has told me that the single most effective way to slow traffic down would be speed bumps. I know that's a hard pill to swallow. And what I'm going to suggest is that I share with you the Safe Traffic Toolkit from VTrans that VLCT sent to me that goes into this in some more depth, gives a range of options, talks in some detail about speed bumps as well as other options. But that's all I have for tonight.
Wonderful.
Could I read off some other options? I was looking into this. Could I read off some other options besides speed bumps? The crosswalk in front of the actual school entrance isn't like to the end, like the crosswalks are really weird. Like, and they're not like hitting like places where people actually cross.
Yeah.
And yeah, like flashing lights at those would really slow things down. And then adding a stop sign at School Street and College Hill Road, and then one at School Street and Sterling Hall Drive might slow things down a little bit. It's like some stop signs. I saw that tree-lined streets, like with pretty large trees, can create a visual narrowing effect that encourages slower speeds. A solution with this may be increasing the tree board's budget to plant more trees, like after the library move. And then people park on the side of the street for like the pizza oven bakes and stuff, but there's no like lines. And I think like if we had some lines for parking, maybe that would do the narrowing effect as well and slow things down. So those are some other solutions too. Maybe in conjunction with the speed bumps.
The VTrans toolkit outlines a whole lot of those, so I'll pass it along to you for maybe for the packet for next time.
Yeah, Casey.
quickly, even with no traffic and no parking, if the parking spaces or parking areas are really visually strongly marked, the street is narrow.
Mhm. Yep,
This is that $12,000 budget that you were referring to, that does. We were talking about fog lines at the time, but parking, painting parking, is that under town or village?
Blacktop maintenance. I think that's what he's talking about.
Well, the village again has a parking ordinance. I don't remember whether it specifically deals with School Street or not.
They're the ones who typically tow because of their snow removal.
Right.
What's that?
They're the ones who do most of the towing.
Yeah,
The town just plows you in, but the village tows you so they can move it out.
right. Yeah, and most of that's related to off-street parking, or,
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, I don't know the answer to that. I can't remember.
Yeah.
I guess more info is needed.
There was a pretty cool project that was done, where they painted 3-dimensional crosswalks. Have you ever, you should Google this, it's really cool, so it's like, it looks like it's out of the air. But it's like, so you have these art installation that are functional crosswalks, but it's supposed to slow down traffic. Cause as you approach it, you think you're gonna hit something.
Yeah, I've seen them.
A 3D painted speed bump.
Yeah.
right.
Well, you could go with those speed cables that are kind of gradual, but they still do what you want them to do.
Yep.
And they're easier to plow.
Yep, that's another option, right?
Could I make a comment of it?
Sure.
When I was on the school board and we were exploring traffic safety in front of the school there, we worked in conjunction with the town select board to hire a crossing guard. And our research at that time showed that anything that involved enforcement was ineffective because we don't have sufficient issuing of tickets, enforcing ordinances, and, we looked at all the different options of how to improve safety on that street. And, the only solution we came up with was the crossing guard was the most cost effective at that time. And I think the select board chipped into paper, I think. But then B is traffic calming measures that don't rely on an enforcement angle.
Mhm.
So ordinances and laws and ticketing and all that, there's nobody there to do it. They don't enforce it.
Yeah, and the problem extends beyond the school day too, one of the options is to install something like there is at the high school, where, when school's in session, the speed limit drops to something I can't remember. 35, right, and that's great for during the school day, but it's all day, all night.
Sounds like we'll be talking about this again, but we need that info and probably some primary numbers to talk about. Know which way to go.
Okay. I'm gonna repeat, I'm gonna turn into a pumpkin really quick,
Yeah.
so if we've got anything else we need to deal with,
I think there's
you
just,
guys can deal with it and I can just go home.
there's
That's
just
fine with
the
me.
executive session, I think. Did you look up the statute, Tom?
Are those folks in the back, there's one.
Thanks for hanging in there.
Yeah.
One, that's a 313. A3.
A3. Okay, at this time, I would entertain a motion to enter into executive motion for employee evaluation as allowed by 1 VSA 313A3.
So moved.
That's not a two-parter.
They don't have a.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Night.